Good evening. Welcome to the Souhegan Cooperative School District meeting on June 6th at 6 p.m. Before we get started, I do want to make a couple announcements. First, I want to congratulate Amaranchu Pradhan, a student at Amherst Middle School who reached round 5 of the quarterfinals at the Scripps National Spelling Bee last week. He competed against top spellers in the country, and we want to congratulate him on this incredible achievement.
And he's coming here next year.
And he's coming here next year, so we look forward to challenging. I want to say congratulations to all seniors who finished their senior projects. It was a great couple of days, and thank you to Brian Lemieux and Kathy Maddock for coordinating the senior projects. And a big thank you to the staff and community members who acted as members, subject experts, and panel members. So we have one couple of them here today. And also, we are thrilled to recognize so many students this week at the Souhegan Scholarship and Awards Night. We honored 116 students who were New Hampshire Scholars Distinctions, 51 Latin honor recognitions, 80 scholarships, including the inaugural Tom Sawyer Scholarship awarded to Kylie Bonifant. And we recognized Owen Stein as this year's salutatorian and Jackson Hip as the valedictorian. So congratulations. So back to our meeting. Do we have Sonia online, any chance?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, we'll see if she gets online. So in that sense, we will go to public input. We'll have those in person with the ability to speak first. And then we'll go to those online who can raise their hand. And at the time, we'll promote you to panelist, and we will acknowledge you at the time. So if anyone in person, please say your name and where you live.
Do I need to speak real loud or?
No, it picks up
Picks
really
it
well.
up. Yes, my name is Jeannie Luke, Mid-3 School Street in Amherst, and I hate to come with a long list of negative things, but a few things that have just been eating at me, and I just wanted to share them with you with the hopes that maybe you could actually take some time to discuss this. When I first learned about the junior research paper being removed from the graduation requirements, that sort of got me to thinking about all the other things that had disappeared from Souhegan. And I also just saw a letter from Jim Manning where he expressed similar concern about the fact that we have become more traditional and have strayed from CES, Coalition of Essential School Principles, our mission statement, our guiding documents, and the Souhegan 6. Souhegan prided itself on creating confident, skilled learners with teachers who were given the freedom to teach. Yes. Opportunities outside the classroom were encouraged. Winter session is gone, with no hope of a substitute being pursued. I also heard from a few teachers recently. They are upset that the sophomores are no longer on team. For some reason, they believe that system made it much easier to teach. Critical friends groups don't exist anymore, and they've been replaced with something that's very different. The importance and stature of community council has been diminished. I just want to remind everyone that's the single body in this school system that has representation from every stakeholder. All of voices can be heard. Senior project panels meet less frequently with the entire panel. So those of us who are outside panel members feel we can barely connect with our student. Senior projects are not advertised to the public so that people can attend. I just want you to know how important that is for us to spotlight the great work that happens here, because it turns into votes of support. So I do want to encourage you to invite people to come. We no longer have a vibrant community service program. No one ever really replaced Maggie Paul, who was really the face of Souhegan and made sure that the community and students were connected. Our grading systems come and go without proper vetting. And last but not least, we are obsessed with keeping butts in seats longer. My contention is that we need to return to our founding documents, trying to find a way to fit into the U.S. News and World Report mindset. We were once a democratic institution that valued all voices and made decisions from the bottom up, not top down. We have produced outstanding citizens and successful graduates who left Souhegan with lifelong skills that would see them through in the changing world. We had it right in the beginning, but we have lost our way. Please don't interpret this as my lack of willingness to change. That is not true at all. We have made tweaks along the way, but it feels like we have abandoned the very principles on which we were founded. Every time we get a new administration, a little bit gets lost. It should be the board that guides the future of Souhegan in terms of goals and priorities. It is my hope that the board will take some much needed time to meet with the administration and all the other stakeholders to decide what we keep, what we change, and what we give up. It was a clear method that Ted Hall, the second principal who was ever here, used to use in every meeting. And it really worked magic to be able to divide things into those categories. The underlying, though, driver of all of this should be our guiding documents. Understand that good work is being done, and I appreciate that. We will continue. I understand that advisory has improved significantly, much needed. So I want to make sure I end on a positive note, but I do hope you will take what I have said into consideration and take some time to really take a look at what's been happening.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone online who is raising their hand? Would like to speak? No hands up. Okay, we will come back at the end for the second public input section. Community Council, Nancy, last meeting,
Yes,
congratulations.
thank you. Most recently in community council, we had the rank by request proposal brought forward by our salutatorian, Helen Stein. This proposal states if a student requests another class rank after the senior scholarship awards night, the counselor may let the student know their class rank in the grade. The student would receive only their rank and no one else's. The ranking would use the weighted and unweighted GPA that is used to calculate valedictorian and salutatorian. Currently, that is weighted GPA. This was brought forward based on curiosity, and this would only be available after senior awards night, with the idea to eliminate the kind of competitiveness that comes with a class rank. This passed on a blind vote. There were 15 for, 9 against, and 4 abstaining. We did this on a blind vote to ensure the comfortability of voters, especially students, to ensure that they were able to actually speak their or voice their opinion. During this proposal, there was we did experience an unfortunate lack of school board representation, which created a lot of room for opinions that were not really based on Souhegan values. But luckily, this proposal opened clarity on the appeal process of proposals due to controversial opinions, as well as opening discussions of intentions behind proposals for the betterment of the community.
Thank you. I ended up showing up at the last meeting when the vote happened. I'll be talking to the two reps to community council to decide whether they want to continue or whether they. So we'll have that conversation once I speak to the other two. It was controversial.
Absolutely.
Everyone listened to each other, at least when I was there the last meeting. It went on for what, 4 meetings?
Yes.
This discussion. So it was intense.
Yes.
A lot of opinions were heard, and that's where the vote came out, and that's what we honored. So that's where we are. Any questions for Izzy? It was a lot.
If there are no questions, I would lastly just like to thank you for my time on the school board. I did have an amazing time this year. Being a school board representative, it's such an amazing experience to have as a student. And it really opens up a lot more opportunities and a lot more experience. for the future. So thank you.
Congratulations. You know, good luck next year.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Before we move on,
Yes.
just curious of what if there was a theme on the, against that.
Other people who are against the
Yeah.
proposal. People who are against the proposal, we're more looking at what current schools are moving towards, more progressive values, especially with the values that Souhegan has in place. We are such a unique school that it's really hard to place a rank on students because our classes are so individualized. For example, one of my friends he took all of the classes in the music department, as opposed to somebody else who may take 7 AP classes. These are real students that I have in my grade. And so it's really hard to place those ranks on people because of the academic rigor that we have in Souhegan. But it's also rooted in our mission statement. This really does. A lot of the argument that people for the proposal had was celebrating academic success. But the class rank doesn't affect you at any other point in your life. As well as we already have the presence of valedictorian, of salutatorian, and we also have Latin honors, which in my opinion is amazing. I love cum laude, I love magna cum laude, and I think that those are great representations of academic success. And I think that class rank really just opens up kind of a mindset of elitism, which I don't think Souhegan really stands for. And that's really what a lot of the people who are against this proposal stood for.
Yeah, well summarized. Thanks. I guess this saving throw is that this be published information, this individual learn about themselves.
Correct.
If they want,
They would learn their rank and only their rank.
and only they're right.
Verbal.
I believe actually, this isn't something that was published, but when one of my friends went to student services to ask about it, he was put on a list and then they said that they would email him next week. And so I'm not too sure if it's verbally, I'm not too sure about that process.
They're going to be working it out, in student services. They're
Right.
probably not sure because it was just passed.
Yeah.
So there's work that needs to be done, figure out the proper way to communicate and what time period to use, when all the grades to come in, there's a lot to it, right, Dana? It's not just.
We have the process out. It's, in working with student services, we are, taking requests for students who are asking for their rank and, I think due to the time of year, where counselors are really focused on making sure our seniors are ready and our underclassmen have schedules. It's a very, very busy time of year, so that's also taken into consideration. The plan is that we will release the information to students on or after graduation day. And that we will release it to their school email address. I think it's important that this information is sunset in a particular way because it's not meant to be an official record. Because we still do not report rank, right? So if someone wants to take this information and say, oh, my school said that I was 114th and then report that out, that really wouldn't be accurate. The other thing that we're making sure to remind students of is that consistent with the practices established through community council, valedictorian and salutatorian are based on academic standing on May 20th. So that's another thing that we're being really clear to reiterate to people. It's something that we've talked about all along the way. It's something that we were fairly clear in announcing that was going to be the case, but what's another thing that we're reiterating.
Is this something that is already done by the guidance office? Do they already create a rank list or is it something they have to do?
So in order to get the information for Latin honors and for Val Sal, we did have to get that information on the 20th, so we do have it. It's just,
So it's not a new process that you have to create this.
it's just the amount, storing it is not something that.
It's only seniors, right?
Correct. Yeah. And that was part of the discussion too, that, you know, it's part of the concern was it's not necessarily helping them get into college, helping them get the scholarships. One of the discussions that was brought up was about what is the philosophy of Souhegan? And should we discuss that at community council before we decide on this proposal? Because there were, I think some people said they were probably going to abstain on voting yes or no, because they would like to continue the discussion on making sure everyone understands the philosophy of Souhegan in order to vote that's appropriate.
Let's you also see like Bedford, Merrimack, state top 10 patch, you know, or newspaper.
And that's their choice.
Yeah, I know.
So,
So
So
my
that
take,
could create some expectations. You know, just try.
but
It's not a debate or an argument.
no, I think it's just, this is just an indicator and evidence and an example, however you want to describe it, but there are, the students that have walked through the front doors in the last 5 or 6 years are a changing type of student for a multitude of reasons. And that is the bigger conversation, that schools are so individualized. They want the Souhegan philosophy in this, but they also want some of that, right? And so we have been grappling with that for a number of years. And that is a reflection of society, a reflection of where students are coming into the building, you know, and you know, and what they want out of school. It's highly personalized. You know, so they want to take all music classes. The kids who take AP classes want that, you know, experience as well. So it's far more complicated. And then community council is a reflection of who is there over the course of the time and who attends, and community members to teachers, to students, to student athletes. And so you can get a vote 15-9-4, whatever it might have been that day. And that's, you gotta honor it. And so that's where we're at. And it's a great conversation, and I appreciate the work. I thought you summarized it terrifically.
Thank you.
And captured,
Mhm.
right? And so that's the beauty of community council and the beauty of Souhegan. So thank you.
and I just want to say, I do appreciate the lengthy discussions the kids and the adults had together. They did listen to each other and brought up different points, so. Great. Anything else from community council? I think that's it. You're wrapped up for the year.
That is it.
That is it.
Yes, you attended our last meeting.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
So I do want to, along those lines, by the way, apologize on behalf of the board or who, you know, the representatives who were assigned to that committee should be showing up or making sure someone can go.
We
So,
appreciate the apology.
so
Okay, instructional presentation. Donald's with us. In our packet is his presentation. My understanding is, Matt, you're not gonna go through every slide here. You're just gonna discuss.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt McDonald, and I am the Student Learning Coordinator here at Souhegan. Just to remind you that my job includes 3 parts. I am the ELO Coordinator here at Souhegan. I am in charge of the Learning Commons, which I presented about to you last year. And the third part of my job is helping teachers use data to inform instruction and improve student learning. So tonight, I'm talking a little bit about that third part, about using data to inform instruction. So before I give you a really short overview of the process we use, I just want to say that, tell you who engaged in the process this year and why we chose that group. So we chose to start with our 9th grade teachers, really for 3 reasons, because we thought that it would be a good place to expose teachers to this process because of the team structure. So we've already got a bunch of people built into that team structure. We also give our students the NWEA test in the fall. So this was a chance to look at those results and do something with them. And also, since the 9th grade teams have that built-in team time at team common planning time at the end of the day, it was extra easy and convenient to work with 9th grade because they already had common time to do the work. So in front of you on the wall is I think they're calling it Franz. Yes, it's the DataWise Franz. So this comes from DataWise. It's a book in process from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And the main mission of DataWise is to support educators in using collaborative data inquiry to drive student improvement of teaching and learning for all students. And I really want to sort of dig in on one part right there, is the collaborative data inquiry. So this isn't a process where administrators look at data and just tell teachers to do something. This is a process where the teachers get in and look at the data and figure out what the data is saying and then make instructional decisions based on the data. And I think that's really great because it helps with buy-in and it helps people get on board with the process. So for this process, the only directive from administration was do it with ninth grade, use the NWEA results and use this process. And the rest of it was up to the ninth grade teams to look at the data. So the data-wise process has 8 steps. And I'll just give you a couple of highlights of the steps and then take any questions that you have. So the first step is organizing for collaborative work, which we were already organized for collaborative work because we use the ninth grade teams. The second part of the process is to build data literacy. And this is when we looked at the reports and just made sure that we understood what all of the words meant, like standard deviation and all of these statistical terms that a lot of people don't know. Then we create a data overview, which is where you really dig into the NWEA data and see what story the data is telling you. And then the next step, the dig into data, is when we look at the data, not just from the NWEA tests, but then you look at other data that you have. So we looked at PSAT data and we looked at in-house data on recent assessments to kind of see how it related to the story that we had determined in step 3. And the main point of step 4, digging into data, is to come up with what we call the learner-centric problem, which is what is the data saying our students are struggling with, a specific skill. And for this process, there's a couple of qualifications. It's supposed to be specific, small, within teachers' control, based on evidence, and directly related to the focus or story that we determined in step 3. Then we moved on to step 5, which is examining our own practice. And so for that, we looked at lessons, assignments, any sort of assessments that we've done related to the story. And the point of that is to then determine our problem of practice. So in step 4, it's what is the problem that we are seeing in our learners. Step 5 is what is the problem in our own practice as teachers. And the qualifications for the problem of practice are similar to the learner-centered problem. We made sure it was specific, small, within teachers' control, based on evidence, and directly connected to the learner-centered problem from step 3. The next step, step 6, we determined an action plan. So now that we knew what our learner-centered problem was and what our problem of practice was, what are we going to do about it? So we really did determine specific lessons and activities that the teachers would do in their classes related to this problem. And one really cool thing about this process, I think, was that the math teachers focused on the numeracy, and for the literacy skills, it was the English teachers, social studies teachers, and science teachers all together working on a single skill that they all noticed in their classes. And step 7 is we come up with a plan to assess our progress. So, okay, we teach a couple lessons, we do some instructional strategies. What are we going to do to see how the students are reacting to that instruction? That's step 7. Then step 8 is we actually start acting, doing the lessons, giving the assessments, and assessing along the way how they're going. So what is next? So what's next is we're still in the process of analyzing the results and discussing the implications for next year. So questions like the lessons that we came up with, will we implement them next year in 9th grade? What will we tell the 10th grade teachers about what we taught the 9th grade teachers related to this, or what we taught the 9th grade students related to this process? We're also looking at how we will expand this collaborative data inquiry model in other areas. We already did a little bit of it in the social studies department this year. And the last thing that we're considering for next year is instructional rounds as part of step 5. So we actually gave a presentation about that yesterday. So that's sort of the process that we went through. You have a whole packet of all the details, and I'm happy to take some questions about what we did.
Questions,
We did comments.
comments? Yes, questions and comments.
So, I mean, the one thing that I want to say, I really like the idea that you were looking at like small specific things that aren't, I mean, not necessarily just how do we get a better score, but like, you know, like that's almost a secondary use of the data. It's really more like where are kids struggling? What help do kids need to be successful? Because to me, that is kind of the, you know, when we talk about the independent learners and the people, I mean, that's all part of building the skills so that they can be successful in a variety of fields. So I really appreciate that. And it also sounds like it's the sort of thing by taking kind of small manageable chunks, you can also build on it each year. So great, this one worked this year. What else can we add next year? How can we keep having this throughout? So I really like that. And I know you're not here about the Learning Commons, but when we were here doing the breakfast, I just want to say, I went in right after the breakfast to the Learning Commons, and it's really fun. Like, there were a bunch of people in there, a bunch of kids studying, students learning, talking, engaging. So just a little shout out to Learning Commons. They're awesome.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Please, Mr.
I
O'Keefe.
want to focus on step 7.
Yes.
That's right. So page 33 of the deck. So walk me through how you guys assess and then move on in the process. Do you go back and visit step 6 and step 5 if you identify a problem with the same core group of individuals, or is this something that we want to adopt and save for next year?
So I can specifically talk about math. So with math, when they implemented the lessons and then did the first assessment, which was the short-term assessment, the results weren't what we wanted them to be. So we met again and looked at the instruction and figured out a new form of instruction and implemented brand new lessons and then assessed again. So it really is, I mean, that frond right there is not a full circle, but it goes back to step 3 to kind of like keep iterating. So we do that as part of step 7.
It's a continuum, and you can go backwards, forwards, and so forth and so on.
Mhm.
You know, obviously, if you're going through and you're at step 7 now, you're analyzing your work from step 6 and step 5, you're figuring out something that doesn't work. Your new data set is the thing that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You go back and analyze, why didn't that work?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Love the circular cycle of back to the beginning again. I think people get the impression that teachers set up, they do their lesson plans one year and just recycle them every year. I think it's away from that and helps break that mindset.
Yes.
And just to echo that, I mean, it comes back to step 3, because, you know, data can be complex, and your first pass at analysis may not reveal what data are actually saying to you, especially if you're still building step 2 your literacy. So, I wouldn't assume that the first, second, or any particular iteration of analysis is the final word on that topic. So having that mindset, keep you honest and keep it well fresh and keep it true to its purpose, as opposed to getting locked down on an assumption that blinds you going forward.
I appreciate look in your deck, how you showed each of the steps and your reflections,
Mhm.
what worked well, what you would change next time, some takeaways. You guys really reflected on your practice as well, to figure out how you can improve going forward. And so that also makes me ask, so you've worked with 9th grade teams this year who are continually reflecting on what work was done now. I'm assuming this is gonna be branched out to the other science groups, the other upper level English humanities classes.
Yeah, I'm assuming that we will do it again with the 9th grade teams because of that built-in
Improvement,
common
yeah.
planning time, but we haven't yet discussed who else will engage in this process
And
next year.
10th grade too,
Yeah.
that continual improvement. So I appreciate the work that was done by the teachers, reflected on their practice, improve their practice to improve the experience for the students. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
Yeah, better outcome.
It was a months-long process, and they were in it the whole time,
Yeah,
fully engaged.
yeah, great.
So just to follow up on something you just said, Dana, is that going to be a part now of the 10th grade group in having this type of process? And then 10th grade eventually turns into 11th grade and we spill over? And so at the end of the 4th year, everyone's practicing this, or
Yeah,
they can implement it soon?
so it's like Matt said, 9th grade was a nice group to start with, just because they were already kind of built in trying to do some of this work, like really looking to do it. It doesn't necessarily need to be grade specific. Like Matt said, this is something that our entire social studies department kind of took on, the same kind of process as they were looking, how are we building the skill of research? Longitudinally, like from 9 to 12. So all of the social studies teachers got together to go through a similar process this year around that skill. So it's not necessarily going to be siloed or isolated to like, okay, so for 9th grade teachers this, for 10th grade teachers this. This is also, as Matt was talking, like, this is also something we'll be talking about with student services. Our counseling department, this is the same kind of process that our counseling department could use, like when we're looking at YRBS data and kind of interventions that we're giving to kids. So it's more about helping people get comfortable with the process, which Matt has been a real champion of. Because it can be frustrating for the same reasons that you're saying it's great because you're always iterating. That's also frustrating, right? One of the pieces of feedback that Matt got was like, the data doesn't give us answers. It just gives us more questions. It's like, yep, then you're doing it right. So the idea is that, yes, this will continue to branch off, but kind of with any group that's working together to solve a problem with teaching and learning.
I'm glad to hear that, because I just want to make sure it wasn't grade specific, and the fact that you as an administrator are going to branch this out to everybody. And to be honest with you, even like a business office kind of setup, like this is project management, this is workflow, this is how we go ahead and manage those practices. It's a nice thing we're seeing.
So just one more.
Mhm.
The ninth grade gave you an opportunity to kind of work like an integrated curriculum where each discipline or each domain kind of help build on the others. You said that social studies and English and science work together. How do you see that working at the upper grades that don't have the team set up? Can you still?
I can see it working for humanities pairings, social studies and English. I think the complicating factor would be that I could see science and math coming together quite often to look at data. I could see that happening for sure.
And in this case, Matt, the science department was looking at some literacy stuff.
Yes.
Right? So in this
Yeah.
case, they were working closely with the humanities teachers.
That's
around some writing
Because you
skills.
kind of see, maybe you have a year where the writing is kind of weak across that class. So you want to kind of involve the other, not just English or
Yes.
humanities, you want to say science, cumulative word problems in math, whatever you could do, right?
Yeah, well, it's one of the blessings is the amount of planning time
Yes.
that we do have as a staff. We're blessed. And so if there's a group that's in position to look at their schedules and find common time, it's the staff at Souhegan. And so going through a process like this is doable in an organization like Souhegan. So I do think, whether it's, it's very natural, science and math, English, social studies, but it's also real easy for an English teacher with, 2 or 3 planning periods, with a science teacher with 2 or 3 planning periods to be able to go find time on their own to continue to do this work if it's facilitated through the right group, right? Which there's plenty of groups, as we know, that comes and talks about data of some sort at Souhegan. And so fortunate, so I think, even though you might not know exactly what it looks like, you have the systems in place to carry out the work, which is optimistic. So it's not like, you can come up with any initiative you want. In ninth grade, it fits real nice, but it's implementing it as it goes forward but we're set up to do that, I think. So
It's exciting. Thank you for taking that on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love that it all feeds back to the improvement of student experience. That's what we're here for. So thank you.
We're so lucky to have Matt.
We are.
I want to say that a lot.
We are.
Just one more thought on it.
Is it praise?
It's,
Okay.
it's a question. It's, but talking about, spinning this process up, we look at it, but as the higher grades, I like what I've heard. Maybe it's domains versus grade specific. But there is another place in our SAU where there's team teaching, where this could be of value, which is 7th and 8th grade. And notwithstanding our district boundaries and sharing of resources might take some agreements of some sort. But is there a pathway, maybe this is more of a superintendent's office question, to leverage the benefit of this model to connect all the teenagers who are in a similarly situated environment? Team teaching model is 7th and 8th and 9th. It shares a lot of parallels. NEWA data is consistent among those 3 grades of that data set. That would really could potentially go a long way to preparing our new ninth graders for the rigors of high school so that their permanent records are strong and stable from day one.
Yeah, no, there's behind the scenes conversation for years about what that could look like, from the time I was principal with Bethany Bernasconi as the principal at the AMS to, as we kind of started to work with, the domain leaders and the curriculum coordinators and the administration at AMS on what that vertical alignment looks like. So I think there's options, and I think, a lot of this stuff is easier said than done. There's a lot of complications, as I mentioned in the BA's office today, about some ideas and thoughts, and the answer is don't say no. But there are ways to kind of align vertically, even though you're two different districts. And so there's more conversation to be done on that.
There are multiple data points that we use in middle school, Ames Web, SAS, NEWA. We are looking very much at who receives intervention and what the intervention is connected to the sub-skill. We've expanded our reading supports to try to get, by the time they come to you, that they will have 80% more grade level by the time they get to you. So that's the middle school focus. It is a MTSS look at, it's subtly different than the data wise, but it is very much connected to, Mike's goals of literacy and numeracy, but literacy and numeracy 6-8 next year. We're using data to drive instruction in groups and interventions.
All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate and, thank all the teachers who work with you on this program as well. All right, field trip. There is a field trip form in there for the music program to go to New York City. Looking for approval on that from the board. Are there any questions, comments on that one?
I have one quick comment on. One, I think it's great. My daughter did some of the different trips with the band, and it was always, kind of a mix of educational and getting to play music and getting to meet other people. I noticed that, I don't know that we can dictate this, but when they talk about a Broadway show, I hope they're looking at a musical, just because it seems like that would fit with all the people who would be involved in it instead of, and particularly, I don't know if it's an option, but I know I took Merlin down to see Chicago. And the band part of it is right up on stage playing. So you're seeing, if you're a band student, you're seeing, the pit is not in the pit. They're right up as part of the performance. And she just wandered up front. One of the trombonists talked to her for 20 minutes after the show. So I don't know if there's an option to incorporate something like that or go to that type of a show or find a show that might allow that. But I think it'd be great. I would also just love to see that piece if they can do that.
I can also speak on that a little bit. Just in my conversations with Carrie as I live in the music department. I can tell you that they are looking into going to see a musical. Carrie has not really decided which show they would go to yet, just because Broadway is kind of behind the scenes and they release their shows as as the date comes sooner, it'll be easier to predict which show they'll go to. But they are looking into going to a musical, so it'll appeal to those musical elements of the students going to.
Seems to me you get the theater people, the people who just sing, and the people who play band,
Absolutely.
all wrapped in together if you go to a good musical.
Yeah.
There you go.
Any other questions or concerns?
I move to approve the field trip application. Second.
Okay, you got a second from, was it Dan who got it? That's okay. I think we've had our discussion. There's no one online, so we can just say all those in favor. Passes. Excuse me. Unanimous. All right. Consent agenda. There's draft minutes and there's 2 budget transfers. Excuse me.
I have one question on this, and maybe I'm just missing it, but at the May 2nd meeting, didn't we have a discussion about the April minutes? And John, you were gonna submit proposed changes to the language.
Yes.
So are those do we have those minutes to be approved?
Well, they're not on here, we
Miss
just
them?
didn't, if we didn't add them, we didn't necessarily have anything, but. I think,
And I'm sorry, I didn't
if you
raise it
can,
earlier. I noticed it earlier.
I think if you can forward that, we can read, we can then add them onto the next agenda. Do you want to say what it is, just to see if there's anyone?
This is with respect to lines 418 and 419. The existing lines read, Mr. Glover suggested that they should consider enabling candidate statements in the voter guides. He would persuade all the governing bodies to do the same. I would amend that by replacing the second sentence with, he stated that it would be wonderful if we could persuade all of our governing bodies to do the same, but if nobody wanted to join, then we could lead by example.
Is there a mechanism by where we can approve those with that change?
It's not in the agenda, so we're gonna have to add it to the next meeting.
Thanks for noticing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you writing it out ahead of time.
And if you
It's a
can
nice,
forward
easy
that,
thing.
if you can forward that, so we can, everyone has a chance to read it, and then when we throw in the April minutes, the next meeting, everyone has a chance to
Indeed.
read through it. Appreciate that.
Other than that, if you need a motion, I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, as I have a motion, is there a second? For this consent agenda, Dan?
I'll second
Are you?
everything, I just put mine in there.
Is any discussion on any of these items? All right, if not, let's see, we already have a motion, the second, so we'll take a vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor? That's a unanimous pass. So reports received. Before I ask if there's any questions on that, I just want to say, since this is our last school board meeting for the school year, say, thank you, with the facilities, Roger and his team, with everything they do here at the school to keep it going. Thank you to the business office. Thank you to CJ for always keeping our financials in order. Thank you to Crystal for all of her nutrition service updates, and this report is fantastic. It gives some information happening. And in there, I want to congratulate Bernadette Wickham and Nicole Jean for 30 years at Souhegan in our lunchroom. So appreciate that. So on that note, are there any, let's go one by one, anything with facilities report? Or the treasurer's report? Or the nutrition report?
Okay, maybe we'll replace the steamer.
Yes.
Nutrition report.
Yep.
By the way, can't remember if it's in this report or, we're only that's 6,100 and change.
It's actually a little less than that.
That is
It's actually,
huge.
it's actually 4,300.
Wow.
But that's on top of the
Of the
amount
15
that's already budgeted.
So
right?
there's 15,000 budgeted.
Oh, to make up.
Yes.
This is in addition.
This is in addition.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Still, it's been a difficult challenge over the past years, so that's,
We did
really-
some course correcting throughout the year and it paid off. So we're pleased by that. And also spent some time, actually going through our, invoices for one of our vendors where we're line by line. Crystal pulled out items that were able to be applied to the supply chain grant. So, which took some work, but we saved a few $1,000s there. So
yeah, it's fantastic.
Yep.
The other, one of the recommendations. Or, did I see this? I'm looking for the word now, but the notion of vending machines I saw in
I
there.
was gonna ask that.
And I guess I would want to know more what that looks like, what's inside, how much does it cost, where are they located? Is it good? Is it quality, or is it, when you think of a vending machine, you think, yeah, it's junk food, but it doesn't have to spend what you put in it, so.
Yeah, and actually, some of it can be our food that we put in it. So there's a lot of options. So we're not ready to move on that, and certainly we'll bring that to the board to take a look at, but she's had some preliminary conversations, and it's actually items that we could create and put in, and then they would be changed out. So there's some possibilities.
Yeah, the new food ideas were interesting. And I noted the request for upgrade in the cafeteria furniture, decor, paints, things like that. We don't necessarily have that in the budget.
You will see it on, the end of year
Yeah,
project list
yeah.
to be considered.
And if-
And,
And now we want to make sure it gets into the budget for next year to make sure we can trust that. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. It's really appreciate Crystal taking that extra time and Mark, who worked with her closely and everybody.
yeah, we took a heavy look at ordering and made some changes, throughout the year. Labor costs and overtime and all that. To get that larger deficit down.
Great, thank you. Mr. O'Keefe.
I know we talked about this a couple months ago, about exiting out of the federal program. Have we made any steps towards that research project, or we still put that on the?
There was one school district in New Hampshire that did, and they went back to federal.
Okay.
So there isn't anyone, tonight, I mean, we talked about it, we did just the cursory, there isn't any school district now in New Hampshire that's out, they couldn't support the free and reduced lunch, not the overhead without the federal subsidy. But it was it for a cup of coffee, but they went back.
Yeah, she has some other fun ideas. She's talking about maybe setting up like a coffee bar area almost, and having like refreshers, like the Starbucks types of refreshers and other things, in an area to encourage students to have more purchases. So, but we want to try to make the cafeteria as inviting as possible so that students want to go there, and they also want to go there during their free periods.
Turn it into central perk at the afternoon.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We have some other creative ideas. We have to have a retreat this summer, Krista.
Awesome.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Just like to be updates along the way.
Sure.
What are you thinking?
Yeah.
And this isn't gonna work for this reason.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah, we have a retreat planned, as I said, this summer, she and I, and we'll have some ideas generated out, and we can report out to you at the first board meeting and see where we're at.
Awesome.
So next on the is principal's report. Before I even ask Dana for anything, I just want to say congratulations on kind of coming up on the end of your first year. We appreciate the hard work you and your team and the difficult situations that have come up over the year with a lot of grace, with a lot of professionalism. So thank you very much. And also, thank you working with the students, especially Case and Fox with bringing back the forums and making sure that there's quality there and bringing back fidelity. So that's awesome. So thank you for all of that hard work. And on that, I'll ask if anyone has questions. You want to address anything you wrote in there, especially anything with JLP? And there's a lot of information in your report this.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's gonna be questions.
I'm
so I'll
assuming.
just leave them. I think a couple things I'd love to say, if that's, if I maybe indulge, is just thank you. It's been a really great year. It's been a very difficult year in a lot of ways, but I feel immensely lucky to be the principal of Souhegan High School, to get to work with and for people in this room and with and for the students and the staff. I've learned so much, and this is a really great place. I came from the retirement party. We have 9 retirees this year, and it was really jovial, and to see all the folks that come back after retirement to celebrate, this again just speaks to the place that this is. A couple of things that I want to highlight. Our 9th grade recently did like a Green Out Spirit Day, and their special surprise was the Kona ice truck that the 9th grade student leadership group had arranged. And it was really wonderful that the woman who runs Kona Ice asked to take a picture with those students, so that she could frame it in her office, because she said it was the kindest group of students that she's interacted with. And she does a lot of events, so that was really great. The other piece that I'd love to share that's not in here is that our baseball team is playing for a championship this weekend. So fingers crossed on that. And boys volleyball is at South right now in the semifinals. So hopefully we'll have 2 things going on Saturday.
And tennis did well.
Tennis did very,
There's
tennis
a
did very
lot
well.
going on.
Girls crossed it very well.
Yeah.
We had great, we have New England's coming up this weekend as well. We have great representation there. We had a great season. So, just excited about those things and, yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay.
And also praise.
I'll start with school page. Number priorities and action piece. Just, I mean, just the volume of. I don't even know how to say it. There's a lot going on there. One, just a lot of bullets. All of those things sound really interesting. You know, and I'm glad that to see that there's a lot of action being taken on those priorities. I don't have any specific real questions. I actually like really kind of study this. See what, learn more, but it sounds robust and on point. So for that, I appreciate.
Anyone else have questions?
I'll make a comment on the JLP issue. I appreciate, I noted you brought it up with us, and I just wanted to follow up on the conversation from last month a little bit, that, I think the desire for communication is kind of a two-way street, and on the one hand, we shouldn't be saying we want communication about every little thing that gets brought up, and we're not, but if it's something big that we feel strongly on, like the JLP, I think it was kind of incumbent on us, and we maybe dropped the ball a little bit on our end as well, not saying back in December 2022, can you please make sure you keep us updated as you go along, because this is important. Because you're right. I mean, I remember that the discussion as it just kind of came out. We're like, okay, great. You're looking at that, look at the options. And maybe that was an assumption on our part that it would come back. But I can also understand why that would be completely taken as, all right, everybody's fine with that. So I think we as a group need to remember that if it's something we want that kind of ongoing robust feedback on, we should be asking for it and making that clear at the beginning. The one thing I didn't see, and I didn't love in there, unless I missed it, was that there wasn't really community council involvement. And I wish that had happened. As I read the student handbook updates, I was like, is there anything substantive here? Anything substantive? Need to go through student council? And then we get to them and it all had. And I was very happy to see that. I think this is one of those things that maybe could have touched there too. And to Jeannie's point from earlier, maybe looking at things like, winter session kind of stopped with COVID, but it came up in my life just the other day because my oldest was like, I didn't even want to make jewelry. I just, I didn't want to travel. So I went to this jewelry one and I had a great time, learned so much. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So I do hope some of those things will at least be exploring what's the balance between the instructional time that we know is really important and that has been lost over the years and the, those opportunities as well. So those are my thoughts.
Any other comments? Things? For you? I think you have something about you're forming.
Well, I just want to start by thanking you for one of the problems with going back to 2022 with anything is that we were due.
Right.
We didn't, everything was like going over our heads for the most part and trying to integrate things, and there's a lot going on there. So this has been a really quiet year compared to 2 years, 3 years. So it's definitely appreciated. And, I know I did come across well last week. It was an interesting day. Last month. Simple perk hasn't been a day. So I apologize if my tone was out of line last week. This meeting, and that wasn't the way I meant it. That reiterate what Anna said about, I wish I had gone through community council. Wish we had picked up on it 2 years ago. And there are things that kind of want to kind of be a little more involved in now, like the parents' code of conduct for sports programs. A couple of questions of what do we give parents positive outlet for some of their frustrations, so we get them a place where they can register their concerns about officials or coaches or other players from other teams and stuff like that. Because I think some of that frustration boils over during games, and if they don't feel like they have any way to deal with those emotions, they games, having been a parent and a fan, attest to that. So, there are things like that that I want to make sure we address, that we have some feedback to provide. So I don't know what the process is going forward on, hasn't been developed yet, or is it gonna?
Now, I can speak to that one point. Kind of communication. Although, I think schools try their very best to open the channels of communication and with, various formats, newsletters, messengers, emails, coaches meetings for different clubs, to keep things going. And I've never been involved with a school in my career that people said you communicated well. And so one of the things that we're exploring is trying to, make sure it's included in our handbooks and in our registration materials, the kind of the flow chart of communications when you have concern, whether it's college career planning or a teacher concern or club concern, or you want to learn more about student services, or I think we could do a better job of that. So that is definitely something that we're constantly thinking a little bit about on how to solicit, information from people who have concerns, and the right protocol to go through, you know what I mean, to get your concerns answered. And I think, we could do a little bit better job at that. And some of the things that have occurred over the last year or two have, kind of got me thinking a little bit about that. And then the other thing I'll add to the conversation, as you can see, by this principal report, Souhegan High School is highly complex. Highly, highly complex. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of collaboration and partnership through various groups. And for us, we're just managing quite a bit. What we quietly said a few years ago, when people talk about, running the school, what people don't take into consideration is we've replaced and turned over between 80 and 90 people in the last 4 years in different roles. And so while you're managing the attrition of that amount, you're also managing the attrition of hidden curriculums, routines, traditions, things that once were. And that is tough, something when I was principal, really, really difficult to manage. And you try to do it in such a transparent manner that you make mistakes and you forget things. And so it got me thinking a little bit. And so I started to poll superintendents of our comp districts, which I've said since I arrived here. You should never compare Souhegan High School to any school around us, because we're not. We're a cooperative district and we were founded on different principles. But then I started thinking about their communication tools and what they do. And I found out they don't do principal reports. Principals don't attend meetings unless invited. And what a benefit that we have, for all our principals to come here and do very detailed. And I tell Dana, you're giving people too much information. They're not going to be able to consume it. Stop. But that's not her style. Her style is, I'm going to tell you everything that we're doing. It's a water hose to your face. Even when I read it, I'm like, it's a lot and I'm in the business. So how about you're a parent reading this principle? School board member who said, I have an hour on Sunday night between 7 and 8 to read this. And so as we work, I always want people to appreciate the uniqueness of it, the complexities of it, and then things that we try to do to do the work that we can. And I, the thing about when you make mistakes because one, you're doing a lot, and two, you're human. And then what I tell people is, we're also, working with highly talented people. But Steve and I will tell you, behind the scenes, we definitely are working with the first year principal, first year dean of faculty, first year director of counseling, and a first year superintendent. I make more mistakes on a daily basis than anyone in the organization. and I have a lot of cover to my right, and I have a lot of cover beneath me. And that's the purpose, right? But then once we make a mistake, or there's an oversight, we could have done a better job. Like I told Dan, I forgot about September 22 when we rolled it out the first time. I mean, that was a long time ago we started this work, because we knew we needed to in conversation with Jamie Sturgis. She's the one that you need to evolve it. And I said, all right, we'll turn our attention to it. And so I keep asking anyone who will listen for some grace and space. And when we make a mistake, we own it and we respond. And I think this was something that I'm glad Dana went back into the process. Dana did the report, that you can see kind of the process we went through. And, it comes down to the question at hand for me. It's still a graduation requirement. Course that it's embedded in is a required class. It's not a separate checklist like Division I or, senior project. It's embedded in a required class. My, knowledge of it, then you can speak more to this. It's more intellectually challenging, and the teachers who develop this know that kids are benefiting from it. They will tell you firsthand if you ask, and they will tell you how they're able to interact with the kids in a more intimate and personal manner because of the content and the subject of the JLPs. And the other part about, and I want people to be really careful about community council. I love community council. I love the idea of it, the implementation of it. We're still dealing with 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-old humans. We're going to say, you're going to increase the rigor and you're going to increase the demand, and I'm going to have to work differently or maybe more. You can agree or disagree with me at this. Sometimes their natural instinct is to go, I'm not sure about that. So it's a balance to how much selling do you want to do? Like, hey, we're going to make this from a 3-page paper to a 6-page paper, or once a year to twice a year, or here's more checkpoints. And so for me, you're always mindful of that. And, we also do have, kind of a changing clientele a little bit. And I think that's different. And so what, people who were here at Souhegan years ago in the early 2000s and mid 2000s did not have this. No one was dealing with this. That changes everything for everybody in the school system.
Including the adults.
Including the adults. And so for me, there's lots of factors into this, and I would be remiss not to take the opportunity as the former principal of Souhegan, the superintendent who makes mistakes on a regular basis. And, I could have done a better job of making sure that we were more prepared to come into the conversation based on the space and time. So, but that's where I'm at, and we'll field any questions directed to you, because you're the one doing the work right now.
I just want to make a comment, reading through all of this and understanding how the kids are actually being taught more about research, taught more about how to write the research paper, taught a more rigorous approach. Because based on my two who recently graduated, they floundered through that a little bit. That I appreciate this approach, and I think the kids are going to come out stronger because of it. So I think I really do appreciate the work and how collaborative it was when you read through everyone involved and the information. It wasn't a top-down project. It's the teachers collaborated on how to improve this. What are the things we can do to make sure the kids are getting better outcome, better experience, a better understanding with greater knowledge. And that's what came out of this. And that's what I read out of this report. So I greatly appreciate all of that.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said, Mike. And I also appreciate what you put in this, the detail. I would say keep doing that. Keep the fire hose on, because who knows which one of us or a member of the public is going to grab onto one of those bullets and say, well, I'm really interested in that. I'd like to learn more. And because we're all human, as the superintendent said, people make mistakes, everyone's running their best. That's why we have this community-wide approach, so we can lift each other when some of us fall down. And this process here for the junior learning project, maybe it's just a capstone illustration of how we can all operate a little bit better. You guys have done a year's worth of work before the first communication to the school board. That's just a fact. Okay, I would just like to say, moving forward, let's not wait a year before, hey, this, we're identifying this as something to change or modify or think about. And when you get this, in summer 2022, I highlighted summer work to synthesize feedback, but there wasn't an opportunity for board members at that time to provide any feedback. So I just think we can choose to use it. And by the way, this is not a criticism of the output. The output, I agree with what Stephanie said. It's more really also wisdom about the process. So, and this that you presented here, the history and the rationale, I mean, it's a really strong case. So bravo for the work. I just think, yeah, I'd like to be participating in that along the way.
So just noted in there is based on what you're saying, if you know, room number 3 has senior project is the first thing, which is something you guys are working on now. So it'll be interesting to hear your feedback on that. I don't know if there's anything you're willing to, if there's anything there yet. It looks like it's still a lot in process, discussing pros, cons, I don't even think you have an idea of what it look at that next iteration looks like, but we'd love to hear more. Eventually.
Yeah.
When
Oh,
appropriate.
yeah, definitely. I think, we've spent a lot of time, this year specifically as a staff, kind of talking about senior project and what are the goals of senior project? Why do we do it? And then kind of reflecting on the work over the last several years, and trying to see like, are the products that we're getting showing us the skills that we are, like, is this actually the right measure for the skills that we're trying to instill in our students? We got a lot of feedback from kids maybe 2 years ago, and made some small tweaks as a result of that feedback. And seniors just completed another round of feedback based on the work that the staff has been doing this year to kind of explore. There's nothing specific to report at this time, only that, for our kids along the way, generally, it feels like a lot of check the boxes. And at the end, they can reflect and go, okay, see, here's what I did. But you shouldn't have to slog through something for 9 months and not really be enjoying it along the way. And then also, I think Mike's right, the cell phones, they have changed things. They have changed everything. I think at its core, senior project wants to be, aims to be an applied research project that is related to a passion that students have. And quite honestly, it's hard to spark passion in all kids right now. Like, we're like Izzy and what she has found in music and
That was
theater
incredible.
and robotics. Like, she's a standout, right? So that's really what's behind this. It's not like, just as JLP have not gone away. I think we need to like be careful about that narrative. It has not gone away, but has become more rigorous, more talked about than ever before. I think senior project is also not going away. But we think it behooves us to continue to iterate in accordance to our mission and values and our ever-changing student population, make sure that they're prepared for the next thing. So that's the spirit of this work. And so what you have is what we've done so far.
Appreciate that.
Can I make a comment about the community council issue? I mean, maybe I'm naive, but I truly believe that when you give high expectations, people will rise to those high expectations. And if community council becomes kind of the just pet peeves of students of things they want to see different or whatever, that really, really diminishes its role. It is really sad that our representative wasn't there for 3 meetings in a row. Is that what I'm understanding? Like, that's because part of the reason for having community members and teachers and members from the school board is so that we can participate in those and not let it just become like, okay, well, the students want less work. But I also think a lot of the students who are running for community council and engaged aren't necessarily just looking for less work. And maybe, I mean, maybe there's ways these things get presented, like I understand if you know, you go to community council and you say, all right, we're gonna get rid of cell phones, you know, they might be like, we want to vote on that. That alone might be no, we don't want to do that, you know? But I think there's ways to go to community council and say, on whatever the topic might be, this is the issue we've got with senior projects. This is what we're trying to address. This is the problem we're trying to address. Cell phones, this is what, you know, maybe we're going to, you know, we're gonna do this, but we're looking for your feedback on how to do it, ways to do it, what you want to see. How would we work?
Did that proposal.
Well, yeah, but how would we work around, but I don't think it came from the administration.
It came through the teachers, which is part of the
Yeah,
council.
okay. So, but how do you, you know, there has to be a kind of dialogue, I guess. And I don't think we should be running from it. I think we should be engaging as much as possible. And I don't think that necessarily means just the, you know, how do we make this easier? But more engaging them in what we want is more rigor. What we want is you all more prepared for life after Souhegan. What we want is to, you know, raise up this, raise up that, you know, whatever it might be, help us figure out how to do that. As opposed to just, okay, what do you got? You know, because I do, and maybe I'm wrong, but I do think everyone, students now can rise to expectations in ways that maybe we don't anticipate at a time.
I don't think I'm so heartened to hear those comments. I don't think you're wrong at all. I think Souhegan proves time and time again, respect, trust, courage, right? When people are like, how can you have an open campus? How can you do this? Well, because when you set really clear expectations for kids and you explain your rationale and you hear them out and you treat them as if you, in accordance with those expectations, then it works really well. I think, one of the things we've talked about is kind of a renaissance with community council, right? It's been a while since they've had a retreat. It's been a while since they've had training. They cannot, students, 15-year-olds cannot engage in those types of conversations without guidance, without learning how to do it, without understanding their mission. So we've been
Understand their roles throughout the.
yeah,
you know,
so
the
we've been
history.
talking about that. So that's happening this summer. You know, the other piece is, yeah, we were missing the community rep, but also 28 people voted on that class rank, 28 out of 47.
Right.
It wasn't just one school board member that wasn't at that meeting, 28 out of 47. That's like barely that's barely the minimum threshold that they need to have. So we need to continue to do the work with them. And there's also some really great examples like that where we partnered with community council in ways that work for them, because also 45-minute meeting a week, if they've got other business, you know, it's not feasible all the time, but like with graduation requirement committee, the kids that were on that committee, that were equal partners on that committee, were from community council, and we're reporting back. So absolutely that work can be done. And we're looking forward to continuing it.
And I do get that, like, our one vote by a school board member wasn't gonna change anything there.
Yep.
I just think that the more outside perspectives you have in the room, the more you have like the board's perspective, the more you have the community perspectives, the more you have the teacher perspectives who can give their input as well, because that's the whole idea of it. Even though it's the students, it's not just the students. And if those voices aren't there to be shared and give those perspectives, then that's lost. So that's my main concern when people, you know, I feel the same way if someone told me that one of our community reps was regularly not there. I'd be like, all right, we need to look at replacing them. Because I think that's just important.
I just want to add that one of the things that I want to make sure we don't lose is the community part of community council and community part of the school. I think in the past, we said we want the community to be more involved, and the response was, yeah, we're going to open up to the school community. When we say community at Souhegan, that's not the school community. It's Amherst and Mount Vernon. It's the community, it's the town. It's everybody who lives here, from, you know, the ones that are in utero to the ones who are passing away soon. You know, it's everybody. You know, we hear the history of the school, that it was buzzing from, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning until almost midnight, because there would be kids coming in early in the morning for projects and adults coming in for classes in the evenings. You know, as far as community council goes, I mean, that's why we have actual community members on the community council. It's not just the school community, it's the broader community in the broadest sense. And I did attend one of the community council meetings. I think there's some room for some training in there. I mean, they use those,
This is.
the
been
Robert's
talked about.
rules that they were using, I don't recognize anything. So there's could be some adjustment there. And one of the things that bothers me is the time crunch. You know, they have 45 minutes, but
It's
numbers
really-
start leaving at 15 minutes. And, you know, at one point we were there, we lost quorum, so we had to wait for somebody else to come in. So it's this weird dynamic for the time crunch. So finding a way to solve that problem would probably help some of the participation problems that you have. Kids trying to get to practice or coming in late because they have to get help from a teacher or, you know, there's a million reasons, but to allow for some of that time, maybe adding an evening meeting or something would help.
Yeah.
Meeting
Discussion
in the
with
morning
the,
before school or something.
with the, advisors. Good point. Thank you. Mr. O'Keefe.
Before we move on to the
Yes.
handbook, do we need approval for the JLP move, or is it something that should be adopted?
So it's in policy with some
So policy can step adopt.
policy, we're gonna need to go and look at
Gonna bring it
policy
next
about how we, because it's, you know, it's still part of the, it's still, it's in, sorry, it's in the curriculum. It's not, no longer just a checkbox that you did it. So we need to go back and look at policy wording and we'll have to bring that forward, and that's where I think the approval.
And so this is still gonna be on the timeline for adoption for next year?
Yeah, we're gonna have to, we'll probably bring it back in September with any policy changes.
Our August
then-
meeting?
Our August, yeah, whatever our first meeting is, after the retreat.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So when we brought the graduation requirements earlier this year and then those were approved, that reflected this change.
Yeah, we don't have our policies changed.
Okay.
Those were in the program of studies. Those
Right.
were approved then, and those what you do now is
Yeah.
align this
We actually have to-
policy with the program of
Yeah.
studies.
And then, yeah.
And that was
so-
in our, it was in the queue. That's not new, that we were gonna along.
Right,
Thank you.
so thank you for clarifying.
Could I, just.
One last thing and then.
One last thing, and it's about emerging things that you're thinking of. Senior projects is a great example. I agree with everything said about community council. The senior project sounds like it's the nascent phase where JLP was summer of 20. So maybe the way I would like to see it start out is what, like, why, what are you seeing that is compelling you to feel the need to evolve that to meet the current students? What is it that is weak or isn't productive for students or beneficial for them? Like, what weak points are you seeing? And so that helps you identify the problem, kind of like the data was, and what are the data that are compelling you to review the whole thing and maybe recast it as an evolution to make it better for everybody? I'd like to see what that analysis shows. As an opportunity then to provide some feedback into your system so that you can have the benefit of our thoughts as you go forward to develop some solutions.
Great idea. All right, so I want to move on to the handbook changes. Just want to make sure everyone had a chance to read the update and understand that it is not. I mean, there's no policy that said we approve it. It happened in the past when there were a lot of changes happening. Put things online, a lot of updates. It somehow became like, oh, school board approves this. We don't have to, but they are providing any updates to us so we understand what those are. And make sure they tie back to policies or changes that came through community council.
That's so long as there's not a conflict.
Correct. If they're, otherwise they have to be a policy discussion or
Right.
something else. And that's what these additions and changes are about. So they can tie back any of those changes. So are there any questions on the handbook changes?
So just
Mr.
one
O'Keefe?
comment, and thank you for listening to me for many years over the parking permit change. And going from $100 to $20 and using public property to collect additional revenue from students that always thought it's been wrong. $20 is definitely fair. So thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Anything else? Anybody?
It just, we're talking about both,
Both of, yes.
I guess
Can I address it?
to Dan's question, I couldn't really discern the Dan's concern about our participation in a parent's code of conduct. I did see that there was the existing policy about
We have a policy, but that's not
About-
what they're relying on.
the role of parents in high
You're right.
school sports. Policy KFA makes
Yeah.
clear the course of action that can be taken by school officials if
Mhm.
a spectator is acting inappropriately. I guess the question is that sufficient? Is that?
Yeah, so why don't you start? I'll let Dana start. We've had a number of conversations on this. Basically, present as, we want to enforce the policy. That's basically what we're indicating tonight. We want to enforce the policy. And then we want the school board, you know, in the rare time that we have to, under knowing that we're gonna follow the policy going into this. And then there's some steps we're gonna take to educate people about what the expectations are. I'll also say, this is not limited to Amherst and Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. This is an epidemic throughout the country. And it is something that as a parent and an administrator, I sit away from parents and all other people, and I've done that for the entirety of my parenthood and administration. And there's nothing worse when you have to go into a stance to address the behavior of adults, whether it's at their own kid, the opposing team's kids, or in fact, other kids on your own kid's team, and coaches and referees. And so this is necessary to bring attention to it, but all we want to do is enforce the policy, tell people we're going to be enforcing the policy, and then there's some strategies that you and Kelly have talked about with internally. So I'll turn it over to you for a second on this one.
Sure, yeah, you do not see a parent code of conduct in this handbook, and that was intentional. What you do see is, you know, the role of parents in high school sports, and then a link to the policy. And so what Mike said is correct. We'd like to we think that those things are sufficient enough in terms of guidelines and expectations, for, I mean, we keep saying parents, but like any spectators at our events. One of the things that an area that we feel like we definitely can improve is, like Mike said, the ongoing parent education and communication. And of course, probably a piece of that does include some of the things that you already spoke about. But one of the things that we're going to implement next year is a mandatory meet the coaches before every season. So we do hold meet the coaches night before every season. But parents don't have to attend. We are going to request that one parent or guardian per athlete does come. It's where not just meet the coaches, but it's where we will have the opportunity to go over these expectations with people, recognize when we're doing things really, really well, and recognize when maybe we're not, and also take questions. We think that will help. We think that we have the tools that we need to make sure that we're having the type of experience for our student athletes that we want. So there isn't a parent code of conduct as such. But we think that, again, between those two documents and then additional follow-up and education throughout the year, we'll be able to get it done.
Building relationships between the different stakeholders is important. I feel like you have some ownership in the process. Less likely to act up. I definitely seen it a lot in hockey. So giving parents an opportunity to like maybe meet with the supervisor of officials for that sport. So having NHIAA send a representative down to talk with the parents, because especially in hockey, and I think it's probably true in other sports, the rules change when you go from middle school to high school or from club to school sports. And that could be hard for parents to adjust, you know, what might be a major misconduct in the club sport might be just regular part of play at high school. That's hard for parents to get their heads around, especially at younger kids. So you may see people yelling at the refs when there was no violation of the rule. The ref followed the way it was supposed to be. And giving parents the information they need to try to smarter in the sport. It's helpful. I know you've probably seen it a million times in basketball. People don't understand the rules, so they.
And it's, Mike said it, you know, this year at a middle school, we had to remove Amherst parent for a number of games. Middle school, at a B game. And we have to take this on regionally. Mike's talking about with other soups. Because it's, Kelly, Dana, Mike and I have had a million conversations about educationally based athletics. This is the extension of the classroom. We talk, and so we really do need parents and we need the board and we need administrators to understand that you are at a school. And we don't scream at officials. Everybody's human. We don't scream. This year, one of the trends is screaming at other kids. Parents are screaming at children of other parents about their play. And we have to, this place, I agree with everyone, we have to work within our systems and communicate. They said it, requiring parents to come to coaches' night so we can start talking about it. Reinforcing the 24-hour rule. I personally, I was a dad. I had the 24-hour rule, which is a good thing. We just have to reset and have our little space here do what's right, because this is educationally based athletics. This is not. And it's important, and we can do it. But we can't, no one on our site gets verbally abused. Coaches don't do it, officials don't do it, kids don't get verbally abused by others. That's not in our mission. And I think it's hostile work environment. I'm ready for an official to sue somebody for a hostile work. They have every right to go to work and get a salary without being verbally abused by me. Maybe that's my next life. I'll go be an official and someone's gonna scream at me and I'll sue somebody for hostile work. We can do better, and this is the right place to do it. And Mike's doing it collaboratively with Andy and with Mike, and with all these other superintendents, because this is a systemic thing. Leading in the right area. I really believe we're leading in the right area.
So 24-hour rule.
That if you're unhappy with a coaching decision, you wait 24 hours before you talk. Like I said, right after the game, you didn't play my kid, I'm gonna scream at you for not playing my kid. Wait 24 hours.
Bus, when they get on.
I actually had a coach come to me one, I said, no, we're not talking for 24 hours. I don't want to talk to
Give
you.
everyone a chance to stop and think.
Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Right.
And it's in
All
the
right.
book.
Appreciate
is
that.
It is, oh, it is.
Yes.
Mr. Glover?
Yeah, just the requirement to attend the coaches night, it sounds awesome. I just wondered what's the penalty? I hope the penalty isn't the kid can't participate in
No.
the sport.
No, the plan is that you have to come in on a different time, or you're gonna have to make your own arrangements.
Okay.
We don't penalize kids for things like that. But there is gonna be, increasing the partnerships and relationships. Because it's a way for people to come in and see what the school is doing, but also indicate what our goals for co-curriculars and, extra, sports. So that's it.
Okay, good. I mean, I support the mandatory nature. I just wouldn't want to take out, ship the student experience.
No.
And
So have a one-on-one
see,
conversation.
that's consistent with our Souhegan culture.
If I can indulge, I
Be accommodating, but also stern. Firm. At the end of the day, if the parent refuses, I suppose the end result is the student would not be allowed.
yeah, we'll do everything we can, phone calls, Zoom
Yes,
calls,
okay.
individual, even, we talked about recording the session so they can watch it, that.
We just need to make sure they watch it.
So I very much appreciate Steve, Mike, Dana, Amy, Katie, and I spent a few hours on this notion of fees. That's how we get high school. We dug in to look at, there's a tiered, it's the only school district I've seen with a significant 4-5 level tiers of athletic fees. It's a school that doesn't have co-curricular fees, it's only athletic fees. Some schools have co-curricular fees. And so one of the things that we want to look at, and I appreciate Stephen's enthusiasm, I struggle with fees. The research shows if you get rid of participation fees, participation increases. Even when you have waivers, even when you have all those things, all the research shows, and there's a Commonwealth High School did it, got rid of fees, and they did in fact see their participation go up. But I also have a business administrator to my right that also understands that there's revenue associated with all the fees that we bring in
Already budgeted.
and already estimated. And so a couple of things connected to the fee. We do have to, one of the things is what we don't want to be a school. And I never wanted to be a school as a principal or a superintendent, assistant superintendent. That really only punishes, if you will, the compliant. Right, so a certain amount of effort has to be, I'm not saying we have to tow Adam, right? We're not going to tow people. But we have to make best efforts to have equity involved in the fee, and I think it is the $20. Sometimes when you lower the fee and collect it by more, you actually increase revenue. Right? And I've seen that in food service, where we dropped it once and more participation increases revenue. But we can't, I don't want it, even though Stephen, I love what you said, I would just let it go, but. I'm like, what did you? I know, Dana's gonna really beat, but I can't have it and publicly say that, but we don't disaggregate just the part. But we don't know. We have gate and we have athletic fee and we have parking fee.
$72,000 of revenue.
Is estimated in our collection on that area of our budget this year, even before, just to be fully transparent, before the reduction in the parking fee, we are below our estimate in fee collection at Souhegan High School. And not insignificant. Now, I'm not convinced that, while lowering it and collecting it by, we have 400 kids, 350 kids, 20 is better than 200. But, there's a math problem there, it's kind of different. So, but in full transparency, but I also, with Dan and Mike said this yesterday, we were at a meeting, we need to look at the entire fee structure and see where we are. And that'll be done. But there is an impact. I can't look at you and say, next year, if there is a little bit less revenue, it's got to be connected to a change in the fee structure. That's all I'm saying. That was my piece. Superintendent said it was okay.
So we'll handle it in the back end of it and continue the conversation. I do think it's more realistic. And I think a study and an update on our findings at some point next year around user fees, tech fees, gates, parking fees. And as many of us are parents of children or former children that went to Souhegan, there's sticker shock. When I transferred my junior year and all of a sudden before September 1, it's $450 of fees to just be. That's a lot, everyone, that's a lot. I'm paying on top of taxpayer dollars. And I'm just saying that, and I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm just saying that is a worthy conversation for students and families' behalfs. And this is a step in it. So I agree with you. And so.
Then, yeah, and for FY 26, that's great. We can budget appropriately.
Yeah.
If we're gonna change something for FY 25, I would be careful about that. Just, if we think that we're gonna collect more, if there's actually some reason to believe that we lower it, then we enforce it for collection, then that would make some sense. I just don't want to decrease the revenue stream that's already been budgeted for forever.
I like our chances of increasing.
Yes.
5140. I do believe there are a lot of students that don't achieve. That we're reminded time and time again. I'll use my selfish example. Last year, my senior year, never registered this car on campus. No one ever talked to them about it until literally the last week. And they said, go in and get a prorated parking. So what was the point of even charging them? So
They used to have the guy,
yeah.
run around and tax all the
It's obstacle for some families to then, who's actually saving us money because they're not on a bus. That's a whole lot of. But they're not on a bus, occupying a seat that can be used by somebody who actually needs it. Like driving and parking up public land in an area that's really in the back. Right? So it's an equitable thing. I'm happy that we did it. We apologize. It's a budget nightmare. I don't think it's gonna be that much of a nightmare when you have to increase for that. And if we need to resource those funds, another part of the budget, clearly the 7 of us can go ahead and engage in that, talk to our business partners over in the community council, right? And say, hey, what are some ways that we can collectively raise additional revenue, whether it be fundraising, so forth. And so forth. There's many different options.
In your back pocket, Bills.
It's just the principle of reducing a revenue stream that was already budgeted. So, right.
It makes
So we
perfect
need to
sense not to
enforce.
yank the wool without it being close to the community, the voters. Right? If we're going to invest in lower revenue, vis-a-vis elimination of fees, reduced fees, that was a legitimate conversation.
Yes.
My hypothesis is we find support. But I guess it depends on what is your purpose, what is the current status, and how does that look,
Yeah, and
why
I
are you
think-
doing what you're doing?
And I think, not to cut you off, I just think it's time to look into it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And based on my experiences as principal and then working with Dana and the people in place now. So it's on our list. So I appreciate the conversation, everybody. It's good conversation, worthy.
I guess maybe before we leave, just quickly, maybe it would be helpful for us to sort of start to wrap our heads. That you could provide it, maybe it already exists somewhere, to share with us, just what are the fee categories, and all of them, just a list, and what are the fees? Maybe,
Yeah, we can get that to you as they stand right now.
Ones are all
just
in place.
a snapshot at a time,
Gotcha.
that'd be helpful.
Thank you for that. So community council appointment. So I sent a message out to everyone to let you know we were looking for 3 people, 1 from Mount Vernon, 2 from Amherst. In Trello, they were the letters added. Autumn Verdina from Mount Vernon, Rick Katzenberg from Amherst, and Daryl D'Angelo from Amherst. We've got the 3,
So we only have 3 seats, for 3 applications,
we have 3 applications.
3 seats.
3 seats, 1, and it fills the Mount Vernon seat as well, which is exciting. So Daryl will be coming back. She's on currently, she's been attending every meeting. Rick Katzenberg, he's coming back from being off for a couple of years. He shows up to the meetings even though he's not on an appointment because he likes to participate. He's been involved in the school for years. And Autumn is new, but she knows she's familiar a little bit with our school district and she worked at the SAU. So very excited and want to say thank you to everybody.
I would actually add, so she's extraordinary. She was heavily involved with the PTA up at Vernon, kids in that system.
Yes, so very excited. So we do need a motion to accept them as they're being appointed to the community council as community members.
So,
Next second. All right, so Mr. Lumber left, but it's not a big deal. We still have quorum, so take a roll, just take a vote. Those in favor of accepting the 3 appointments. And those who don't, those abstain. That passes. Did you vote? Yeah, sorry, so didn't see you. Yeah, so that passed 4-0 here. Are there any committee updates from anyone in particular? Anything? We're gonna get to recreation soon for athletics. Anything else?
policy.
Yeah, no, I have to do some more work around. I have a meeting with that new vendor that we're using. Once I meet with them and I see the timeline, I'll be able to get a timeline. I know there's people are jonesing to begin on some, there's a couple pressing topics, so I'm aware of it, but I just want to make sure that we're gonna be prepared to do the good work. So I think this transition will help us. So.
I'll take policy.
Yeah, and this group you're talking about is the same one I think the New Hampshire School Board Association uses for their.
Correct.
So.
So,
Simply,
mhm.
so more to come shortly. I have a meeting next week or so.
It is, okay.
Thanks. Simply be.
Yeah.
And it's just a generic question. Is there gonna be a structure to these committee meetings in the summertime, Asian time, stuff like that? Like, is that?
Yeah, I need to think about the most optimum time to run policy based on the work that we want to do.
Yeah, not just policy, no, the other stuff. So I want to make sure that we're not impeding the ability of your staff to. use what
Yeah,
reserve
no,
time.
so part of it is in, you know, I'm not actually completely prepared to speak to this, but I will.
Okay.
We're trying to counter out the events over June, July, August, September, October, November particularly. And to make sure that we balance all the committee meetings, the budget meetings, the school board meetings. As we prioritize the things that we need to get done, right? And so for me, if you get a chance to come into the office, you will see the calendar on the board, you will see the dates, you will see all the different committees, you will see Amy's meetings, and we're trying to line everything up to make it efficient and manageable. Because what you have is you have a lot of board members that double dip on a lot of different committees and they serve on different budget capacities, and you have SAU staff that does the same. And I just want to be very cognizant of that. And personally, for me, I think policy can be far more efficient based on my understanding of it. And I want to make sure we're prepared to do the good work in it. I know people are excited. And I think in previous, like relied, for this particular board, a lot on you and Sarah Lawrence to kind of carry it, right? And Christine was the keeper of the knowledge of policy. So we're just planning for that transition and playing with all the other committees. So.
And I also want to be mindful, right? So we're gonna be having a goal conversation coming up here. And for us to now put more work product on the SAU office with committee meetings over the course of the summertime, we want to make sure that capacity isn't stretched, right? So we want to do it intelligent, we want to do it smart and also people. So if we map out some sort of avenue to say, hey, we want to do 3 or 4 different policy meetings, we want to have a buildings and grounds thing, we want to have an athletic thing, like I think we need as a board to structure that, so we're not overburdening the SU office. But there are 2 other districts that they also have to manage, plus a building project type thing that we do very mindful.
I appreciate the patience as I kind of sort it all out. I'll get it there.
Okay, thank you for that. Next thing we have is the impact fee discussion. So Amy, Steve, Mike, myself met with Bill Stoughton and Dean Shankel. Thank you, Dean Shankel from the town. And they spoke with their lawyer about concerns of the impact fees and how we might be able to use them. And we think we found a way that we hope will be acceptable to the selectmen based on recruitment. So basically saying the science labs in the annex were designed last minute as the annex was being built. They weren't actually designed as science labs. So, but we were out of space. The annex was being built. Last minute, as the building structure was going up, they decided to add some science labs. So they were put in these specific rooms that aren't really designed as science labs. Therefore, we now need to design them as science labs. So now we're going to recoup the fees to do that work. And that's how we're going to go to selectmen Monday night to ask for the fees. Does that make sense to everyone? So we sent a letter over to make sure we got on the agenda. And we should be on the agenda. I haven't seen it yet, but we are. Did I describe that correctly?
Which is awesome. But what an outcome of tonight would be just the sense of the board to begin development and posting an RFP for the design of the science lab annex. Because this is, as Dana and I don't know if you signed it, we signed it, but probably just you signed it. But NEAS is very interested, required a special report this spring about the status of this, because this is a deficiency. And remember, we're not meeting this, these science labs are not meeting minimum standards. And they were a point of deficiency on our accreditation. And so we would like. Sorry,
No, you're good. From 2018, which got us a series of letters from 2018 up until my final year as principal, asking where you're at. We in that letter, what we were able to do is answer all the questions at the building level that we were in control of. Dan and I worked on that with the staff, but this is the outlier. We need partnership with the board, and that's where you saw some of the science labs on a warrant article a few years ago to try to address some of the stuff. That's what it stems from. Just wanted to make sure we knew exactly where it came from. And it's a real thing, and they came for a visit, which is very unusual. I don't know what the name of the, there's the name of the visit?
There wasn't.
It's called like a special report interim.
But when we did the report, the school creates the NEAS report back in 18, so they
This was self-reported.
self-reported that the buildings weren't, the science labs were not up to standard, and so that's how we find ourselves in June of 2024 with this.
So what's this? I just want to make sure that we have some knowledge of what's going to go into the RFP. So I want to make sure that I don't think over at the annex we have a dry tank, all that stuff would have to be installed. that if we could integrate that into the main building where we already have plumbing and the electric tanks. I prefer labs to be, especially chemistry labs, to be on the first floor. You never know what kids can do with chemicals and what gases might be released, fires, doing propane and Bunsen burners and stuff like that. But we evaluate whether it would be better to redesign labs that we have here and integrate anything new into that. Those labs into the existing systems rather than.
Yeah, we can certainly craft the RFP to look for the best, most efficient, but to be completely honest, one of the, so like Dana and I had the conversation, capping any science class at the annex at 60. Which is, sorry, capping any science class at the annex at 60. That would align us with the state requirement of square footage per kid, Dana said to her assistant superintendent. Which is fine, but if we really have to fix it. Because it's not right.
They can comment on that. I think we need to fix it for that, but for more reasons. It's not right, and we don't have a modern life sciences laboratory.
Right.
And I want to echo Dan's point is where on our campus, we have the type of laboratory we need, that's the right size we need, not necessarily have to be in that space that wasn't designed to be labs in the first place. I think that's what he's saying. So we should RFP to find a solution within the entirety of our campus,
No problem.
and we can have conversation about.
No
Is that-
problem.
Is that fair?
And writing the RFP to look for the best, most efficient. But we also have to understand at some point, even so they find a space like right here, to say it's not, but right here is it. We really someday have to fix science at the annex because it's not correct.
Why we have to have science at the annex
They're
at all.
saying move the classes to.
Well, there's a
No,
lot
I'm
of.
not, you're not,
There's
you're
a
not
lot.
okay with this building.
If those became classes.
So basically what, like I see what you're saying.
Pick up.
So like if we move the 3 science labs that are over there, right?
Yeah.
To here, then you're taking this space and you have to reorganize. So the RFP does that
Thank
work,
you, I appreciate it.
right? Like that's what it does.
That's what.
So there's no worries there. We're gonna, we're gonna go ahead and go through the process, but this is a question that has to be answered,
Yeah.
right? Because, we self-reported in 2018, and that's before anyone here got on to any position. And so now we are answering those questions to this, and we will go ahead and, if we get approval for impacts, we will write an RFP very carefully, which the board will see, and we'll come
Yeah,
there.
I want to go the art of the
Elaborate on why I say this, because we renovated a camp a few years ago. We thought it'd be a good idea to get it farther away from water than bigger. We didn't have the limitations of shoreline zoning. We moved it back, we did all this stuff, and then the contractor happily did all the work we asked him to do, and that, and he said, you could have saved yourself a lot of money if you just torn it down, start over in the first place. But like, why didn't you tell us at the beginning? He said, well, you didn't tell me that's what you wanted. So we have to make the RFP as general as possible, so they don't go, well, what about cheaper?
best
Just
space.
renovated those labs or built a main building.
Fair.
Well,
Yeah,
holy
but
cow.
if we can start the RFP development process now and not wait until our next board meeting, which is July. Because we'd like to have information, like we've written about board knows the budget. Maybe it's 1.2 million, maybe it's 400,000. So that month does help. And if worst case scenario impact fees, I agree with Stephanie, I think we're gonna be okay at impact. But up to 35,000 could come from the maintenance trust. If somehow they say no, because the work's gotta go, we gotta do something because of accreditation and lack of, as you just said, lack of space. So we'd like to start the process to develop the RFP and post it.
So I've got two questions. Number one, what's wrong with the existing plans?
The ones that was taking
Ones that
before making
the
it two,
taxpayer years ago.
it was
the
never, so. It never actually went through any architectural design.
It didn't.
It never went through an architectural design. It was literally, I worked with somebody.
I was a friend of a friend that just wrote.
They were being helpful. They were being helpful. It was not, there was never any,
Did we pay for that or?
that went, no, not that I'm aware of.
This isn't free. This is up
Right.
to 35.
But this will
Vernon is
actually-
entitled to these dollars.
This-
I'm sorry, I was on the building committee then, so I just wanted to share with you. They were originally designed primarily as classrooms instead of lab.
Right.
And the Brentford village label.
Right.
Improper. Because they're, yes.
Yeah.
Originally.
The person was clerk of the works, we spoke with her.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got
I
it.
spoke with her many times.
and I also have, I've given you guys blueprints from the original undergrad.
Right.
It shows exactly that they were originally just classrooms.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
So just, I want to make sure, I'm not talking about the 2002.
No, you're talking about the ones that
The
come about 3 or
2019,
4 years. When I first got on the board,
Yes.
we were going forward and trying to
The
put,
$400,000 a year.
and
for
that
4
was gonna
years.
include the A and E piece.
Thank you.
Yes.
And then the dollars that we're spending here, we have a rough idea how much we're going to be responsible for. So I did this work, presented it a couple of months back. Can you recall what that dollar amount is?
So it would be, about 15%, because that's the proper and
Yes.
of like 35,000. So that would have to come out of the budget.
Yeah, it's gonna have to come out of our
Budget
unexpended.
or trust fund or something,
Yep.
but yes.
If we get the impact fees on, we about it.
Our unassigned fund balance.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we okay at start developing?
I think so. I just wanted to say that there's. I think, said something, well, we don't have the lab space here to do that. I would just like to remind the public and everybody, the art room used to be the band room, the weight room used to be a shop, the learning commons used to be classrooms. Okay, so we have a history of utilizing our space for the needs that we currently have and changing it, moving things around to deal with our current situation. So maybe in fact that is true. I'm not saying you're not true, but I look at it first instance, like we have a science wing, there's some interesting things going on there. Maybe that is more appropriate. I would hate for that to get lost on a first level assumption before we.
So, yeah, so.
Absolutely fair, thank you. For all that will help guide the creation of the RFP, will make it more inclusive versus restrictive. It will not be limited just yet.
Right, we'll put a pin in that doc. We're gonna talk about that in 10 minutes.
So,
9 minutes.
Okay. So you wanted a motion on approval for the art?
I guess that sense of the board, we're fine. Management first.
Yep. So the discussion on recreational facilities contract.
Form.
Right, Steve, I don't have anything on that, the recreation contract.
Oh, we're prepared. Yeah.
You're prepared.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Keefe.
Yes, Dan and I had the pleasure of sitting down with our district leadership about a month ago to talk a little bit about sort of the contract. At this board's direction, we went, we reviewed it, and there are a couple things that we believe that we should open up more detailed or deeper conversation with the Amherst Rec Department, as well as inviting the Amherst School Board to a deeper conversation. That's there because so we started off answering 3 questions. Number 1, do we need to reopen contract negotiations? We felt that there are several reasons to reopen those negotiations with the department, including addressing paragraph number 4 that omits interior spaces at the high school from reimbursement costs. So if the gymnasium is being used for an Amherst Rec project, there's no reimbursement back to the Souhegan district. And so the basketball program specifically is that we are upfronting and paying for the custodial costs to maintain the Amherst Rec program inside the gymnasium. Staffing the high school maintenance groups, that was the second thing that I wrote down. Equity for Mount Vernon residents to use the high school for rec programs. Mount Vernon residents are charged a non-resident fee to participate in a rec program here in this building and on this property. And I didn't feel, and we felt that that wasn't equitable. And then develop rules and rates for specifically the baseball hitting cage that was now developed out back. So those were the 3 things that we felt. The answer to the first question is why we need to reopen contracts. The second one is what's working, what's not working. Kelly is very clear that she states that the scheduling process is actually working as designed, and she's pretty pleased with it. She says that they use a Google Doc for that stuff to go back and forth. Amy was kind enough to share that we received one payment a year, 2 payments a year. You're going to be looking at form. Do you want to address that with us? Because it's perfect.
The invoices?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do receive itemized invoices from Rack that show what this is. But we want to, make sure that have clarification in the contract, so we have a that understanding of all things. That's the money that goes into the field maintenance trust.
And of which Amherst Rec currently takes a portion of those dollars that are credited back to us in the form of an administrative fee, and created a Google document can share. Nice, you can actually see that stuff. Yeah, can you pull it up? Do you have? No, forget. I was going to ask you to share. The next thing was whether or not the reimbursement of town programs that we're actually using is covering costs for the property. And so that's something that Roger is still looking into. I don't see anything on that yet, but I know he was working on that particular project and making sure that that we are covering the costs for the equipment and the facility, specifically wear and tear in the fields. One specific thing that was mentioned was the soccer nets. They get an awful lot of wear and tear that we're replacing and not necessarily getting reimbursed. And then last but not least was the makerspace issue, going back to the thing that I said in it, is whether or not we want to engage the Amherst School Board in a conversation to bring the makerspace over. And Steve Chamberlain walked in perfectly in time here, because one of the things that we had talked about is where in the physical footprint of this building could something like that go. We had talked specifically about the weight room being the former shop area for the high school before it moved upstairs onto the second floor. That was probably the most ideal spot to put a makerspace for a multitude of reasons when it comes to security, building security, making sure that there's nobody walking randomly, maneuvering around the building. The physical infrastructure from an electrical standpoint, a plumbing standpoint is already designed for that space. Making sure that we could infuse it into the curriculum and doing a very light version of a textbook program, and whether or not we could actually do that. The income for that program is currently about $60,000 a year to the Amherst school system. So that would be moving over to Souhegan if that was something that they were interested in engaging in a conversation, and something that we're going to have to obviously talk about. And then, of course, any movement over to the high school would displace the current use of the space. So that would be something that could be pretty controversial for our population.
Take the place of the labs.
Yep. So that was a quick snapshot. There are a couple of things that we talked about in terms of program study. You want to cover that step, Steve, or we talked about including the makerspace in the curriculum?
Sure. There are some connections here stronger than at the middle school for curriculum connections. There was some traction through the Charlie Swiss program to connect. There really isn't tremendously strong connections of curriculum to middle school. The equipment is really beyond the middle school program. But the space currently doesn't occupy it. At the old iteration of the 2 facility projects ago, there was a sense of urgency to remove it because that was going to be the renovated space. But currently it doesn't take up significant educational space at the middle school where it is next to the ID Innovation Design Lab. But so if you're, it would be a stronger curriculum connection here, without question, but it's not an inhibiting factor over there. One of the things that we talked about is moving the weight room, preparing a space for it. What happened? Where does the weight room go with that type of place? It's really a domino piece. But yes, if you ask me, there's a stronger curriculum connection to Souhegan High School for makerspace than Amherst.
Yeah, so that's the second component of that deep dive conversation, right? So the first one is negotiation of contract piece. But I think the starting point that we want to talk about and have a conversation here is this is something we even want to investigate from a makerspace standpoint. Because we did talk about that back in September of last year, where we saw potential value bringing that over here and explore that. They said that we address it. It is a part of this contract. So we're going to open it up for discussion on the other components. We're going to want to open it up on the makerspace as well. And if that's something that we even want to do, we probably need to put the pause button to further evaluate the makerspace.
Could I ask a question about the makerspace? Probably for Steve, I guess. Question about the makerspace. What prevents us from, it makes sense that it has more curricular value students than the other students. But what prevents us from leveraging whatever curricular value we can extract today with the makerspace work that exists?
No, Charlie could absolutely walk over. That's not a problem.
Students could walk over
It's just time. It's just
and do,
time.
I guess then the question is, do students, is there any current curricular use of that space currently with students?
Good question. When Charlie has taken a tour. Not recently, but to a tour said he did, you know, I've been informed that there was connections to it. So I'm tomorrow morning, we're doing a science tour with Erica Foscat. I can do a tour with Charlie and others.
Full space.
It's
Full space.
very cool. It's incredibly well designed and secured. It's an amazing thing.
Yes,
People that use it love
it's a great space and it's a lot bigger than the way. Two spaces together.
But yeah, but I don't think, but they don't use the two spaces, maker space. And
Oh, yeah, they do.
Well,
But there's,
No,
yeah,
no,
but
no,
the
no.
equipment is.
I don't mean the kitchen and the top. Shop is large, it's the two spaces that have opened up.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and
I think so. I'm not.
I think so. beside the point. I guess my point is, there's a nice exit, bring materials in, it's perfect, it's right next to the parking lot.
Yeah.
Drive up and you're not in the way of anything.
Right.
So it's got a lot of positives, to just the way it is laid out. They did a really good job setting that up. But the question is, if the answer is no, no students, the students, current high school students can use it as curricular space, and no one is using it as curricular space. What what's the point? Or can we,
add the R.
So,
why can't we use it now? Or if we're gonna develop new curricular
But like,
stuff.
but
why not
here's the
use it?
thing, it's at Amherst Middle School, it's a different district and they're scheduled. Right, they have their own classes and it's not a free reigning room with nobody in it. That Charlie can just go over there when he wants. Right? You know, I mean, there's a schedule, so I think there's that part of it, you know what I mean? Like, and then after school, it's very scheduled. You know, depending on what the rhythm of the year and the season by different groups
For the public.
for the public. So I think there's some barriers there, but, you know, I think, you know, it's something that we could put, it came up on conversation. This is years in the making, like trying to get people to have access to it from Souhegan High School. And I think they meet their curriculum needs based on what they have without having to go do that. And so I think that's where their heads are and I think it's just finding a desire to see what the need is, see what the schedule is and the impact of us acquiring. That's what it will take, you know, to answer your question. So,
I mean, I personally would love to explore which curriculum we already have that could use the space. Additional curriculum that might address students who are, you know, those ones that are kind of lost somewhere and might find some light CTE sort of program or something like that, working around that they could use if it makes sense. So I'd love to hear, but this would be a conversation about development of curriculum, the cost of that. Is that something we want to take on? I would love to explore first. I think it'd be very interesting, but is it?
It's exciting opportunity. There, my head fills up with all of the.
Priorities, so too. What are the priorities?
Yeah, well, I mean, it can relate to the robotics, it can relate to engineering, physics.
3D models.
So many, you know, practical engineering where you design something. That want to test a process, you want to test a force, you want to test theory. Go there and do it.
More neolithic. Everything
I see there's a lot of positive applications.
Yes.
For the current sort of structure that we actually have now. It's just whether or not there's an appetite from the seven of us to continue the conversation down that path of, hey, is it viable to bring it over?
Right.
Kind of our September conversation, when things were the, pre-K room, right? So bringing that over, and clearly there were a lot of concerns on both sides, right? Positive and negative. But out of that conversation came, if you take the makerspace, we now have two more spaces at the middle school. We're not talking like an auditorium size space.
Right.
We're talking two spaces now that they can use for other and repurpose for other things when they do have a space. So this is where that conversation started in that, and now it's morphed into, is it potentially something that we want to further investigate to bring over here as a part of our other contractual techniques?
So it's the kind of a straw poll sort of feel, Anna's like a yes.
Definitely
Very
support
interested.
Yeah. Support. I think,
Looking at it as well.
I think we should study things that reasonable and feasible concept.
How it can be best.
I'm not interested in building programs for students that don't exist. But Dan's point, like, and some of your others, I mean, that makes sense. That yes, you can apply your skills in something in the bigger spaces. I mean, that's professional. That is high level professional equipment. It's intriguing to explore. And even though I think it is bigger than the weight room, it's not an infinite size space. So I am interested in learning more about that.
And I have to be very, very clear, please keep me honest, because this is the point of the meeting. This will not be bring it over, now we have a CT program. Right. The regulations, the requirements to launch and fund and operate a proper CT program are a lot bigger than bringing over the makerspace.
Yes.
Makerspace would be the first step. See that in our space, students then get to access it as a part of a curriculum that already exists. And then we can start to build, okay, is there interest? Do we bring over a CT? Do we go ahead and partner and become an affiliate of another CTC? I don't even know if that's possible. I just made that up, right? So we're like Wilford CTE remote. Whatever that looks like, that's the deeper conversation that happens after whether or not we bring that over here into students.
Yeah, and that
It's exciting at the opportunity.
in for us, that is down the road because, as you said, our kids have access to 3 CT centers.
Yep.
Alvin, Nashville North, and Milford. You know, so, and we're not considered one. And so for me, if we engage in this conversation, it would be for SEU 39 students and Souhegan students and Amherst students to figure out how that partnership will work. But you know, we'll continue to work on this, among other things, and we'll just keep plugging away.
So do you guys want us to vote to open up the negotiations of the contracts and invite Amherst to a meeting, the rec director to a meeting, and I'd like to invite the Mount Vernon rec.
There we have some other things in this.
That's okay. Yeah, the other stuff that I was doing. Second.
And already, so did you get the motion today?
Folks, open up the negotiations to the contract with Amherst and.
Yeah.
Correct. And then can we add into that
The Amherst
motion to appoint Dan and I as the building and, I'm sorry, as the rec representatives?
Yes.
That's what we did this on there.
I think we can.
Yeah.
Maybe
more
she's still
specific
questions
language.
on what it was.
She needs,
Oh,
she needs more specific language because I think she didn't catch
Yep.
everything you said.
To vote to, I know, it's funny, I complain about the warm king of coldness here, and the air conditioning is actually very loud, we're sitting here.
And cold on that side.
And so the motion to invite
Yeah.
the Amherst School District, the Amherst Recreation Department, and the Mount Vernon Recreation Department go to a meeting to reopen negotiations of our current, and I want to get the title right. The lease agreement between the Amherst School District, Souhegan Cooperative School District, and the town of Amherst. That's the name of the document.
You good today? Awesome.
I
So,
will second that.
so Anna, really is seconding. Any other discussion around that? If not, we'll take a vote. Those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. That's exciting discussion. And thank you for taking on the other parts of the discussion as well. Appreciate it.
Would only ask that you, as our representatives, that you keep in mind that for me, to really be excited about a solution would be a solution that keeps us very flexible in how we might best use our space just in an uncertain future.
Comes with a lot of opportunities, I think.
Yes.
Very few downside, very little downside.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Next on here are to talk about board goals. So I did send a separate document out to everybody the Friday. I think it was, that I had written up and so a lot of it, and I do want, there are some changes I definitely want to make, because a lot of our goals need to say that, you know, we're supporting some of this work that's getting done, as well as, you know, there's times that we're involved in doing the work, but a lot of it is also creating the environment for them to get the work done, or the policies to make sure they get things done, that sort of thing. So I just want to get people's feedback on what you thought about the goals that were written. I didn't, like I said before, I didn't get into a lot of the measurement pieces, or there's some things we might want to work out a little bit. But just feedback on what I had written.
I like support the continual improvement in instructional practices and curriculum. If possible, if we could have some discussion before the budget process starts on what our priorities are. What, you know, because I think John said at the SAU meeting on the 23rd, something about not leaving things on the cutting room floor, and I think he was referring to the scoreboard and like the furniture that we wished we could have kind of encouraged you to leave that in the budget. So to have that discussion where, okay, these are the things we're going to leave on the cutting room floor, I think the way you said it, it'd be nice to kind of do that and kind of discuss if as a board we have any concerns that we want to make sure are addressed in the budget. I'm not going to speculate on anything like that, just to have an open discussion ahead of time and I think one of the examples is last year we had a proposal to pay for the AP test.
Yeah.
But it was too late in the process, so that would be a time for us to suggest things like that. And
So can I just ask a clarifying question? On
yep.
that? So are you suggesting that the board is going to provide feedback to the administration?
No, to discuss, two-way discussion.
I think I can clarify. I think I know what he's saying. I think what he's saying is that if let's say there's a budget put together, and Mike's looked at it and he's like, no, remove this, remove that, maybe keep a sub list of those things that were removed and just say, hey, these are things we thought about, but we removed them.
So that's, so
Does that make sense?
this is why I do want to have this conversation.
Yep.
And forgive me, just because I've spent a lot of time, I think, developing a really good budget process that has improved over the years that I've been here. So I just want to make sure that we are, that we're all on the same page in terms of how we move forward with the budget process. So this, what I'm hearing, I think you're saying, is that there are potentially items that you want considered. So like when John had brought up the AP testing. So this would be an opportunity prior to the budget for you all to have a discussion and give us feedback prior to us creating draft one.
Hopefully in a creative fashion and not like.
Of course, yeah,
So,
and I have no objection to that. There's a lot of work that does happen, and if you're asking us to keep a list of all and document all of our discussions prior to draft one, that's not going to be something that I am willing to commit to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What I'm hearing more is, and stop me if I'm wrong, but if there's something that you think maybe should be in there, could be in there, you'd like to see in there, the administration thinks would be a helpful thing, or we would like to add. But aren't going to because we want to keep it at this level, or because we don't want to, you know, like those types of things. Then we can have a discussion about, huh?
The wish list.
Yeah, but I don't know, I mean, like, is bad furniture a wish list, you know, but yeah, like, because there have been a couple things, like we said, you know, yeah, we wanted that, but we were really cognizant of making sure the budget stayed at this level, so we kept it out. You know, and I don't think you're talking about little things along the way, but, you know, like, we do really need to replace, I don't know, you know, X, you know, one of the things that's maybe on our end of the year wish list. And we had it in here, but then we pulled it and this is why. So we can look at and say, is there a way we can get that back for you? Because we do think, we agree that that's actually an important one, and maybe if we can come up with a creative way to keep it in, then we think we should be.
And the voters have been supportive in the past. We put the secure front entrance. That's $250,000. That was a lot of money to ask for on top of the budget. And we were able to make a good case for them, support it. So if there are things like furniture, I think that we can make a good case for that. Things like that, but maybe you tempted to pull out to keep the budget below a certain level.
So that would come from the superintendent, those types of.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the timeline of when that would happen, you know, and for me, you know, as I develop budgets as a principal and as a superintendent and Steve weigh in, anytime you come in, you want to be as realistic as you possibly can. You don't want to lose credibility in your, you know, fiscal responsibility by coming in with a 12 or 13% draft one. You know, that just get that, and then that gets out there and say, hey, what are they doing? And then you don't want to lose credibility with boards or, you know, some taxpayers by saying, what are they doing? And so, you know, yeah, you know, there were things in the Souhegan budget, even as a principal, I would, you know, get it from the process. And I'd be like, no, we're not bringing forth that to the superintendent because I don't want to look incompetent by and I'm not aware of the climate out there, right? And so I was very conservative. And plus here, you know, when you're balancing the three districts and everyone's pulling from the same buckets, you know, you just want to be very mindful of it. But Dan, to your point, you know, I think it's worth a reflection on when does that fit in, you know what I mean, of that conversation, is it, you know, and what it looks like here, so I have to think on that, you know what I mean, like.
Could it come with the first draft? Like, look, here's the first draft, here's where we are. It's an X%. Here's a list of, I don't know, just 5, like the, you know, or three kind of significant things that we really thought about. And we really kind of want and need are gonna have to deal with at some point. But we pulled because we didn't want this number to be above X. Because
Yeah.
we also talk about, is it appropriate for a warrant article? Is there some other way we should be addressing it? Is it, you know?
Yeah, so let me think on what that looks like, and let me talk to people a little bit more about it, and I get it, there's things that get yanked quite, you know what I mean? Like the base.
It was such a bummer to hear about the scoreboard. You know, that you almost put it in the budget and it didn't make it through the year, and, you know, I feel like it's something we would have supported adding in there.
Or a van, or whatever.
Right, but then I just want to be very mindful of this.
It does have to pass.
And so I just need to be very, very mindful of this process. As a building principal, you had to be very careful of what you included in the budget as you work with all the different departments and teachers. And so what I don't want is people usurping the process that we have internally in the buildings and then within the SAU. If, hey, we say no, really outspoken teacher who has a pretty tight relationship with a board member outside of it and said, hey, we said no to that. And, you know, we're here and we didn't bring forth something because it doesn't fit part of the bigger plan because the department heads are here, principals are here, superintendents are here. And it just had, I have to be mindful of that, how that looks. And so let me just think to that point. Let me think.
That's why it's important for the board to kind of
I mean, I would say only,
take that decision on.
only ones maybe like draft one, and it's only something that comes through you. I mean, but yes, I get it, we can think of that.
Yeah.
Okay, So some ideas I had, like, so the first one, I kind of want to reword it a little bit, but it says the same thing. It says support the continual improvement of curriculum instruction and assessment practices. Kind of things up the lane. Some ideas underneath it about measuring. We can say we can ensure adequate support with the time funding to provide a complete curriculum review process for mathematics. We can receive updates and evaluations of the implementation of freshman writing course.
Can you
And
give
those
me
are
the
things,
most recent copy, because that's no.
yeah, no, that's what I said. I kind of changed it and actually, Mike, I sent it, can you forward it to the board, what I'm reading? This one, do you mind? Because Mike has it.
Well, these are the ones that we kind of shared with you after like the preliminary
Yeah,
conversation.
you and I were talking about updating some of the language a little bit cleaner.
Okay, I'm going off the one that you leave.
Yeah, and that's why I'm gonna have Mike send out something to you guys right now, with a little bit of an update.
Thanks.
Cause it gives some little measurement things in there. That will be helpful. Because it talks about like, make sure we're evaluating the freshman writing course and it's doing. The understand it's supposed to be doing. So it's kind of like a measurement piece, like, let's make sure we hear about it. What's the results? All right, thank you. So hopefully Lynn will get that email here. It talks about, it cleans up the language again, receiving updates and recommendations, ensuring that Souhegan High School meets the needs of all kids. So that's that piece. It just again, the language is better. That's what I was trying to get at. And then, how we support all students, so we can engage in those conversations. So any of those make sense to people? Do you want to add on that number one? So it's just, like I said, it's not much. It adds more.
If it's possible, under number 2, I want to make sure that we highlight both communities, for the commission plan and process. for
Community.
Both communities.
Yeah. And then the established communication plan. Okay, yep. Sure.
Maybe you could say the community dash ampersand on Vernon and defined as the community. I mean, we already say it's a vegan community. It's to town folk. But it is just the Souhegan community.
Yeah, establish a communication plan to ensure the Amherst and Mount Vernon communities are aware of priorities, innovation, and progress. And then we need to create a plan. We definitely do.
Read a period at the end of 1D.
There you go. And I don't know if there's other measurements under number 2 you can think of, or action items. And that's a communication plan. Then number 3 is again, reviewing the facilities, meet the needs of all students.
A mission number, sorry.
Yep.
1C, I think the mission says to meet the needs of all learners.
Good with that.
And I think it's really, I mean, it's aspiration, it's the attempt to meet. If we say that we will meet the need of all learners, it's an impossible task because the school system has its inherent limitations. Cannot solve everyone's problem for their entire
No, it
life.
says receiving updates and recommendations. So it's making.
Ensuring high school. meets the
Right.
needs.
So it's understanding, are we meeting the needs of like where I wrote something just about the high achieving learners and CTE and others, this language says just all learners. We're gonna make sure we meet every single learner, the CTE kid, the high achiever, So,
Like all learners so much better because honestly, when you say it that way, the high achievers, the CT kids and all others,
they're all learners.
there are high achieving CT, you know, I mean, like, it's
Yes.
not.
100% right.
College, I think what we need,
On the ensure that we're meeting the needs.
right,
That we're, this should be more aspirational because we can't possibly, in the real world, meet the needs of every kid.
You could say ensuring Souhegan is working.
To strive to meet the needs of
Striving
every
to meet the needs.
striving.
Don't weaken it.
Updates.
We can do it. This is the
Receive
promise of
updates.
public education. It's the greatest shot of anywhere, right in the place for effort now. We can do it. Don't weaken it. Ensure.
Or continues to focus on meeting the needs, or ensuring Souhegan High School continues to strive.
Honors the mission to
Right, yeah, sure.
mission.
Are we, along those lines, being consistent, I think D should probably be understanding how Souhegan High School supports all learners. That's should be capitalized.
But at the end of the day, you know, the aspiration is you're aspiring to ensure it happens, and you guys are getting updates on that. That's how I read that,
Yeah.
you know, and so for me, they're updates on us trying to ensure. Like, here's the thing, like, you know, I'm a firm believer, and you set high expectations, you set lofty goals, and you do your best to try to get there, right? And if you're falling a little bit short of a lofty goal, it's still better than meeting a mediocre goal.
Amen.
And so I'm fine leaving it as is, if everyone knows, like, we're gonna aspire for that, but we're going to give updates honestly about where we are with these things. So,
These were discussions that,
We look at three.
yes.
Okay, reviewing the needs. So continue to review to make sure we've got curriculum alignment, but I mean, like, we're not going to renovate the science labs next year. So should that be something like
Support the work.
continuing with the renovation or moving forward with the renovation or something like that?
Investigate renovations.
All right.
Well, or
the investigation, the renovation, like that, that's.
The investigate.
to modernize and bring in compliance, it's our science labs.
And if you can also throw in a part about our, not warning, but letters of interest from our accrediting agency into our goal, when the community reads it, they see there's a purpose.
To meet the accreditation requirements.
Or a bad thing.
It's two purposes though. It's to meet the requirements and it's also to modernize our laboratories and meet the current needs of students.
Right. We could say to meet the needs of learners and the NEASC requirements.
Better.
And then the review for addition of so.
Is that a lot of work? To review the addition of solar,
Right, you just, you'd have to engage a company to see,
to give it an estimate.
you know, what are the possibilities, there's rooftop, there's fields, we
So,
have to understand the.
I would hope that maybe Mike could work with Roger to
Yeah.
develop a plan to investigate that, right? We're not gonna put solar or warrant or solar. I don't think we've got enough time
Right.
to look at that for the March ballot this year. But maybe for next year. And so if Roger comes back and says, hey, this is the game plan, this is how you focus that. I mean, it's got a true revenue generating. So, I think a solar project on this building could be pretty decent.
Yeah, I do too.
Consider potential addition of solar.
Yeah.
Oh, I already did that.
Zero hour.
That's great, right? I know that stuff.
Someone.
Can we broaden that to, and other efficiencies? This, I'm thinking, if you go solar, then you want heat pumps and things that help you take advantage
And then
of. solar.
talking, yeah, big money
It's much
renovation
better,
potentially.
But it's a lot, save a lot of money.
We did. Personal
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, because you have an opportunity with geothermal having. I don't know if you can access it for geothermal.
So that's, to me,
Super.
that's gonna be an expansion for like a whole, more than a year, so the question is. we
Like
bring-
long-term type stuff.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
This is where
okay.
John and I could work on the subcommittee going forward. Sure.
Other energy efficiency.
Mhm.
At some point, I assume we have to upgrade some of our heating system. I don't know how old it is or
There we go.
we should
It's
understand.
solar to pay for the upgrades.
There you go.
Carbon neutral.
Yeah.
Can't hurt to look in. All right, how are we feeling on 1, 2, and 3?
Can we? Let's say something slightly different. On 3A,
Yeah.
like just a little bit more, make sure facilities align with curriculum needs. Which I think is what we're saying. Not really a substantive change, but instead of just curriculum alignment.
Word.
Curriculum needs.
What's the motivation behind that? I'm thinking, the science lab renovation, the makerspace kind of thing. Are there other concerns that we have about spaces?
Yeah, it goes back to the all learners. I think as school is becoming a little more individualized. I think as we have kids going in different directions from CTE to ELOs to free periods, spaces to do the work. And then I think you're gonna see other classroom departments growing. Right? I think our business department is growing. I think you're going to see, some interest in health and PE over the years as that grows and changes, as people, move on. So I think there's just some overall facility planning for, 24, 25, 25, 26, as we, build programs of studies and, and implement and carry out the classes in the curriculum, or the classes and the courses that are in student demand and require return interest. And so I think you're constantly kind of looking at that, so.
Short term, long term, it's a.
We're also looking at, we have some conversations with Dana and Mike about alternative pathways, alternative ed programs, alternative diploma programs. So when we had a conversation about starting CTE as sophomores, what that does for interdisciplinary work and the alternative pathways. So make sure the facility has enough flexibility to account for different pathways as we work on alternative diplomas or alternative. There's a population here now that we can serve differently, and I think probably better for their becoming the best version of themselves with an alternative pathway. And not major facility needs, but some facility needs.
Okay, this will help us engage in those conversations and understanding what that like.
I think again, the word ensure is very strong.
My favorite word.
So help ensure, so that means a softener.
Strive to,
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's always competing interests.
right,
It's not just money, space, time, how many students are served. This is the best use of our resources. So
Right.
one can make an argument that you're supporting this. And another person can make an argument that there may be some other competing interests. All depends on what's on the table and what we're talking about at any given time. So I
how about examine whether our
understand,
facilities support.
yeah, I mean,
Evaluate.
evaluate.
I like the
Takes-
examine.
Or how our facilities support curriculum. Or how our facilities could support curriculum needs better than current or something like that.
Okay. Examine how our facilities could better support the needs.
Configure facilities to better support,
Anything.
reconfigure.
Like everything falls beneath that, though. Ignorance.
Yeah, everything falls underneath it.
Right,
How we
it's not self-limiting.
I feel good.
Yeah,
The only
this
thing-
isn't a legal contract of things.
Yeah.
Right.
The only thing I would ask is that we put this on our agenda.
Yes,
So when people come in, they see Mike's framework of success. I know it's not this framework of success, but I like to call it that, follow them by our board goals.
yeah, because I want to remind ourselves, when we
Yeah.
start making decisions, we start talking about
I want the
things.
community to be reminded what we're focused on.
Yes,
With these three.
I
Yes.
think,
I think it'd be good right at the bottom of our, just the first, just our agenda.
Yep.
So everyone can read it.
yeah, I agree, post it everywhere. Two, who are we communicating with this in this process? That,
The community
Communication
members
plan.
of Amherst and Mount
Okay.
Vernon.
so I think one of the things we identified through the JLP experience and graduation requirements of before, and that if we choose to operate differently, as administrations have operated with boards, this is what Mike said about how is the administration going to share budget information and thinking while at the same time not looking incompetent from his perspective. And I look at that differently. Like, so there's a communication improvement or evolution, if you will, that is between the administration and the board, at least board members. I think that's really important. We're starting to recognize that. That helps us communicate with our communities. But that's a different task in and of itself. To improve or maybe it could be part of our communication chapter in our communication plan is how do we communicate with each other and board members as board members without violating right to know. So there's an internal communication, then there's like internal communication level B, which is board members communicating with the board, administrators communicating with the board. Then all of that can support the
So we could have
Community.
two, there could be an internal communication and also external
I think
community.
it's really important. So we have it in our minds that that's something that is important to us.
So what if the heading for two became, increased communication? Period. And then A was what is now currently two, establish communication plan to ensure that the Amherst and Mount Vernon communities are aware of priorities, innovations, and progress. And B, they'll work on internal communications or improve internal communications or.
One quick suggestion for communications is to kind of standardize our language of communication. Like, for example, I was trying to find the Instagram account where the decisions are listed, where everybody's going to school next year. And for 3 years, it was called Souhegan, decisions 21, Souhegan decisions 22, 23, and this year it's SHS decisions. And I was looking under Souhegan and came up with the other 3 years, but I couldn't find this year, and I was like, how am I supposed to find this? And, there are probably 10,000 SHSs around the country. So could we standardize one way that we're gonna describe ourselves in any communications? We're gonna be Souhegan, that's just an example of it. In programming, you have a specific way of putting in remarks to describe how something is. That we have a particular nomenclature for things, so we standardize how we describe ourselves and refer to ourselves, so we can find ourselves when we Google question.
All right,
Part of the communication plan.
Yeah, just
yeah,
a
all
standard.
right. So I recreated number two. Yeah,
And both those, the A and B need to come a little.
I don't know.
And I don't
I'll do
I
it.
suppose this is not a hierarchical order, but nothing flows, or I should say it positive. Everything flows from us doing communications. We're not having a good internal communications. It's going to be really hard for us to understand how to support the continual improvement structure of the system. Same thing with facility needs. So, and if we don't have the good internal communications, it'll be very difficult for us to communicate to our constituents what it is what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how much it's gonna cost. So to me, that there's a priority in the hierarchy, it's the communication piece. Everything flows from that.
All right. How are we feeling? You there?
Comfortable enough.
Um. I don't know, do we need, do you want a motion just to make it official, or do we wanna, I can say,
Is it inherent, sorry, is it inherent or should it be added with one, B, and C? It says receive updates and evaluations or updates and recommendation. Should it also include expressly and provide feedback to?
I think it's implicit, it's, I mean, so we will go forward, we'll put these on the agendas and we'll make sure that we're addressing these things through agendas, through our discussions, and we have some priorities to go forward.
Motion,
It's probably good to make sure that we all adopt these,
I'll make a motion to approve the SCSB FY 25 goals as currently drafted.
and we'll send these over to you. All right, we have a motion seconded by Mr. O'Keefe. I think we've discussed it enough unless there's a last minute comment. All those in favor of adopting? It's a pass, a unanimous pass forward. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the conversation and engagement. So discussions and start time, all that is about is we really have not had that conversation. And I know at the SAU, there was a discussion of, let's get back to.
Universal start time.
Universal start time. So the question is there any other discussion that people need to give any feedback at this point, or we just want to wait till we hear more from the universal start time and we'll get this? Is there something at Souhegan that needs to be addressed? So the superintendent hears it.
I'll just give you a quick update. We met with the bus company today and we gave them a deadline of August or September 15th to give us the model. And so we'll have more information then. So,
One thing I'd like to make sure that the start time at the high school is based on best scientific practices. And then the bus schedule doesn't dictate start time dictates the bus schedule.
yeah, no,
You know, I agree with trying to get it at 8 o'clock. But, you know, even if the buses get here at 8 o'clock, we don't necessarily start until 8:30.
yeah, no, we can see where we land there and then, you know, see if it's viable. And then we'll come back and have more conversation on it.
Yeah, because the routes and the time, it really has something to do with town.
Yeah.
We just want to know how many buses and how long the routes are.
Yeah. All right, all right, good. We'll move forward on that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just, if I could just say,
Yeah.
it's a whole, this is one piece of a holistic review of a supporting instructional time, right? I think, and efficiency in the system. So as I recall, we approved the proposal to add this to our data package. But it wasn't the only thing we're going to look at maybe over the next year in terms of how to mitigate some of the stressors of the start time situation. And at the high school level, it was going to be, you know, what does our club time look like? How efficient is it? Is it going to
And
be?
see- and
Is
see some
there,
of that
is
too.
there, is there room? Does it make even sense, notwithstanding the science, to open up some of the facilities before school to get do some productivity for kids who are early risers? And on and on. There was a whole lot of things. We look at our school calendar as part of this thing and so on. So I just wanted to recognize that the start time discussion, the bus thing is one element of a much larger thinking process. I thought we were going to do maybe pick a way out of it this next year.
Yeah,
Or attempt to.
that's my understanding. Yeah.
And I think like, what I'm hearing is that the starting point of that is figuring out what's even practical with bus company.
Yes.
And then we can look at like how would clubs fit into this, how would sports fit into this, how would this impact these different pieces, how would it, you know.
Because
They
it
would
could
not
matter
be
when,
morning,
if buses get here early when the school doesn't start, maybe there's something happens before school. If we end up staying with the start times we currently have, then we need to think about closing it. But you could have a, well, what if, we're better off understanding what we're going to do and then making a decision on the others as well.
There was an interesting thing, I guess, schools up around Newmarket, Portsmouth area are using first student buses. And they actually have live GPS tracking of all the buses. They count the number of kids get on and off, and they can provide real-time feedback to parents where the bus is. I think that was an interesting thing, if we talk about getting bus data. and
We know
stuff
about
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's pros and cons.
Yeah,
It's
it's gotta be pretty expensive, I think.
the safety thing. We don't really love that everybody knows when one kid's getting off the bus.
And I think the price, because when we looked at it, when we renegotiated the last contract, was very high. Because they wanted to bill us for all the equipment that they're gonna.
Yeah, our contract is quite competitive compared to.
When we ask people if they're gonna be, there's that survey, are you gonna sign up? Do you wanna ride the bus? Da, da, da. Do we ask them? I just don't remember, how frequently or how many days a week they anticipate their kid would? Because it seems like that might be a helpful thing. Because like, I know I always put my kids on it because occasionally they rode it. But most of the time I went right by on my way to work and I dropped them. Dropped them over middle school and walked out to high school, depending, grades and all.
Yeah, we've had some conversations with the bus company about ways to improve and streamline based on ridership. So we're potentially gonna try to help them to do a better job of that, and give them some ways to monitor when, there's no one getting on and off at a certain stop for, however many weeks at a time. So we're gonna work with them on a more systematic process to be able to drop stops when we don't need them anymore.
It's like, I would have been absolutely fine if the answer had been, and we ended up with neighbors that rode, so honestly, the stop always ended up being at their place anyways. It was originally mine, and they go there.
Yep.
But I think there's nothing wrong with if your kid's only riding occasionally, maybe you have to go a little bit further.
Right.
Yeah.
So this
It's not as convenient, but it's the trade-off, so that, you're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
So
mean,
we're
you
gonna,
mean someone who's an infrequent rider would have to walk farther to get to the stop?
Yeah. It's a big deal if you've got to walk to the corner.
yeah,
Every
single
you're not sitting there every single day, all winter, doing the slightly longer walk, but on the occasion that you need it, yeah, you gotta walk down to your neighbor's stop. And I'm taking like a quarter of a mile or a half a mile away or something like that, but we've got a lot of stops on the way and just, or something, because, we know there's really small numbers on the bus and a lot, and it's.
Yeah. Okay, I think we understand. Yeah, I think we got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Just trying to. All right, so we're moving on to the unassigned fund balance. You're in project.
so you should have two documents. One of them is in Trello, and I also just recently shared that with you all tonight. So let me know if you don't have that. This is the
In addition to
projections. So I'm not gonna go through all the lines, but basically between our additional revenue and expenditure savings, we are projecting to be able to fund all of the warrant articles, the maintenance, expendable trust, the recreation, the turf, technology and vehicle. We also had projected a tax effort offset of 320,000. We're projecting to be able to fund that as well. So we have a balance of a little over 117,000 that, as of right now, we're projecting that number's gonna change. We still have to close out the year, close out POs, chase down errant invoices and all of that. So there's still work to be done. But that's our conservative projection right now. You also had in your packet the potential projects to consider funding. So we had gone through these at the last board meeting. I don't think anything has changed. Auditorium, the light pole inspection was not there, yeah, so that's that was recommended that we, complete an inspection of the turf field metal light poles. Just to, it's something that really needs to be done on a periodic basis, for structural soundness. So that was added. We don't currently have a quote for the auditorium sound system, so we're, suggesting that we remove that item, at this point. That's okay. Yeah, so the total right now is 158,500. And I did do a calculation just so you had an understanding of what the tax rate impact would be for both Amherst and Mount Vernon. So for Amherst, it would be 6 cents. A 6-cent tax rate impact that would not go back to the taxpayers, and that would be about $27 on an average home. For Mount Vernon, it's an 8-cent tax rate impact, and weirdly, it is also $27.
What is that, even?
I don't know why, but it's based on
Guys
two
have more
different, two different tax rate impacts and two different property values, and it all works. The math just comes out.
Yeah, perfect.
But we are doing, we are doing the 320,000 tax
Yep.
already.
That's all.
Yes.
This is just
So
over and above.
This is over and above that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Mr. O'Keefe.
So my question on the light pole inspection, could we just take that out of the turf fund?
I don't know. We could, I mean, the way that, fund is set up, it's set up to save money for the replacement
Mhm.
at a certain point, but we have been doing better than we anticipated.
Does that
So-
maintenance fund say repair and maintenance, or does it only say replacement?
I'd have to read the warrant article for this.
We are looking at retitling that next year.
We are looking to expand that to be able to do other things out of that.
And the second part of that question, are there any other trust funds that we can tap into the thing here?
So you mean like your, I mean, it's not budgeted.
So like, an example in Mount Vernon,
Or
the village
in-
school can access the Scared Trust to.
Oh, you mean those?
It's landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside, even though it's, no one ever thinks of
Like
that.
PD
So
and stuff.
like the cafeteria component, which I'm not in favor of spending the money on, with unassigned fund balance. Like, is there any other sort of bucket of funds that we potentially have access to? Not to,
I'm aware.
to hell with it.
No, because a lot of our town ones are PD related and stuff like that, so they're not for maintenance of buildings.
Yeah, there was, spelling and just,
So it seems to me we should definitely do the first three. And then are we able to look? And the question is, we won't know what the exact final number is.
Right, so what I would be requesting the board to approve is an up to dollar amount. And then when the dust settles and we know exactly how much we have, then we would know what we can fund.
And you could do for the, like, say we're good on the first three, so we got the 88.5. And there's only 30 left, you could do partial replacement for furniture, right?
Well, that 117, that number will definitely change.
Right, no, I understand, I'm
Yeah,
just like
but if it-
hypothetically,
if
if
it
it stayed the same, that would be, you
Sure.
could do a partial on the furniture. The furniture wouldn't have to be exactly that
Right, that could be flexible.
amount.
Yeah, this is, the annex company, is that the entire first floor?
For the,
Annex replace carpet, it says on. first
oh,
floor.
yeah, so.
All
yeah.
the stuff that's shredded and looking terrible.
Benches.
Yeah, so this is for the carpet. Yeah, so, and we have, there was some water damage, so we actually have Trimex covering, 5,800 of that, but we're waiting to do the work to see if we can leverage those funds to, replace.
It's best to do it all at the same time.
Yeah.
So if the 20 is before the 58.
Yeah, the total cost is the 25,
Okay,
thousand.
all right, it's
25,
already.
I didn't exactly this.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, what do I want to say? I want to say that, when you said take the auditorium sound system off, would say, yeah, there's no number in there, so it's not a.
Don't have a
but
number.
I
We
would say
don't.
leave it in. You know, I think this is one of the problems with the scoreboard. Scoreboard was never in this list, wouldn't even recommend adding it to. There's 3 more plus the 4 or 5 more scoreboards that are at the end of their life, besides the one that we're replacing now, that's what I understand. But we're gonna need a solution for that at some point. So my thought is, things like that, once they get on the list, like they can almost never leave. But the list could be very, very long, and then it's like, okay, now everyone's sort of aware of, you know, yeah, this is something, or maybe one year we can do it, maybe one year we can't, we just have to make these decisions, but it would be nice to have awareness of.
So we really like-
what's not on the list.
We really like budget first.
Yes,
Really would like people to
Put things
put it in
into
the budget, and if Mike has to yank it because of the number is 3.2% into the 3.4, then you slide it to fund balance where it goes next year.
but we own that budget, so we need to be part of that process of decision making, what to yank. And what to advocate for, collaboratively with you. It's not, we own this thing together.
Well, so, you know, the stages, it starts like
Right.
budgeting, you know, documented best budgeting practice, those closest to implementation build the budget. Right, that's the teacher in the classroom builds the budget, not superintendent. I don't build the science budget. That's the budget closest to implementation is the budgeting practice, and you go up from there. But then at some point, it becomes the board's budget. That's when you own the budget. That's when you want to throw an AP, I mean, you have to go early, but you throw an AP stuff, you want 5 scoreboards, that's fine. And that you own this, but the superintendent, his job, why he gets the big buck, is to present his budget to you. And then you turn his budget into your budget by saying, Mike, I think you should give the assistant superintendent a big raise. Yeah, at the SAU level.
I do think, and I do think, I completely agree. I do think though that there's benefit to, and maybe this is the solution to what we were talking about before, Mike, on like, when do you present those things? Like, here's the budget. Here's the other things that we are gonna need at some point, and that I've put on the potential unassigned fund balance that we could look at that.
Absolutely.
It has the benefit of what Dan was talking about, like, we know these are things that really need to get addressed, but we're waiting.
Absolutely.
It is the benefit that John keeps bringing up of like, if you're talking to taxpayers about, look at the budget and say, look, we didn't even include
Right.
these few things, and we know we're coming, but we didn't want to ask for extra money for them. We're gonna try to deal with it other ways, or we're hoping there'll be the available funds. And it keeps the, on everyone's kind of aware, so it's not.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I just got to think about how that,
Yeah, how to present.
how that comes to life and, you know, what I'm trying to do, and I know you don't want to hear this, I'm trying to keep these things consistent between the 3 districts.
Yeah.
You know, we have 1 SAU in 3 districts, and we want to act in similar manners with processes. And so that, as I'm listening to you, I'm just trying to think about how to make sure it's consistent, because really what it does is impacts the SAU.
Yeah.
And so we already operate ×3, ×4. And if we have to do ×3 plus 1 for this district and 1 for this district, I want to make sure everything's manageable.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where my head's at as I'm listening to everybody.
Yeah.
And, so.
Remember,
And you don't want things lost because
you
they're.
know, Amy said we got $320,000 going to reduce the tax burden, right, out of fund balance. That counts as revenue,
Yeah.
right? That's not going to the tax. Last year was 700,000. We swallowed $400,000. The tax rate went up before we even started the budget, $400,000.
Yeah.
Which if $300,000 is 6 cents, that was 18 cents. And so this is, so if you manage this well, then, and Amy's working really hard to reduce the fund balance, to budget more of what we know. Because over now, she's been doing this for a little while, that we can see, and the audit tells us where we have fund balance. And the other document that's in Trello tells you where the fund balance is. A lot of it was in staffing. We didn't fill 2 positions. There was a special ed position we didn't fill this year, and there was a domain lead we didn't fill position. That goes into fund balance. But you really, some of you could say, look, I want $1 million in fund balance, because that's great. That goes in revenue. And then your overall tax burden, but to get to $100 million in revenue, you gotta freeze the budget. So it's managing this. So when you spend this now, if it's going to be spent in the general fund, this actually controls your tax rate better by doing it now. Because it equalizes your revenue, stabilizes your revenue.
So, I think Amy is looking for a motion
So
to
What
spend.
you're saying is, we should spend, by your logic, if I hear you right, we should spend whatever the 117 and change it turns out to be. So, to make your point, to stabilize the revenue.
Like the district the taxpayers that I used to talk to said, Steve, we don't want peaks and valleys. We want to be able to project and understand our budget, so peaks and valleys, and that's why this legislature put the ability to put 5% above, used to be 2.5%, now it's 5%, we can talk about that in the budget. But stabilizing the tax rate was a value to the people, but to be completely honest with you, I've been a little bit funky in this place, because there isn't as much talk about tax rate in this community as there was in my past life. And that's part of it. Right, not Souhegan, I'm talking about Souhegan because it's,
Yeah,
but you're right.
Our tax rate is huge.
And Mount Vernon's the same because it's that one in Amherst's, but when you go a co-op, it's a share and no, it's not as linear.
yeah.
So I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. It's the 11% that we're responsible for this institution. Exactly. But I have to lead with what you just said, the tax rate, right? So as I mentioned last month, we have a very expensive bond that has actually been purchased and will be hitting our tax base in December with their first tax bill. We will not get Mount Vernon to support the significant budget if we do not give the maximum amount possible back to the tax base to reduce that burden. And the commitment that I've been trying to do over the last 3 years is trying to create a bigger connection, the Mount Vernon community and this place, because it's so dislocated. People do not feel a part of this institution. They just don't. And it's reflected in the fact that they just don't pass this budget. They just don't. And so if there's anything we can do to build that, especially in a year where our tax rate's going up, we're already the third largest in the state. And now with this big bond issue, a community with its tax revenue so low, now with an extra, $3 million bond piece coming, plus a town hall that we need to repair. A 6 cent on the tax rate is 6 cents that we're now actually adding back to them to say, we didn't keep it, we didn't pay the cafeteria, which I already said, right? Like, we're gonna go to you next year through our budget process to say, this is the stuff that's important to us. We need your feedback, let's get buy-in, and then from there, we can actually build the consensus. The scoreboard issue, I don't wanna beat a dead horse, we should be fundraising for that. We should be working with our booster club to go ahead and replace the one out here in front, out there on the baseball field. We should never go in the tax base for that. So all of that stuff, I will support the light pole inspection because that's a life safety thing. The Ford van is something that pays itself back. And then the carpet is because it's
a safety thing in some way.
Yeah.
It's ripped up.
It's horrendous, right? So it's like, it's a bare bones basic thing. And the furniture replacement, I support that as well. And so that's $138,500. But we won't have that right now. So I'm gonna make a motion to spend up to the non-return to the tax base amount. So I'm gonna need your help framing this because I don't want to tap into the amount that we're returning back in your estimate.
It's already done.
That's already done.
Okay,
Yeah.
so up to $138,500,
Everything but the.
everything but the cafeteria.
Damn
Yes.
This is
Mr. May,
actually
you seconded.
This is actually becoming the budget priority session that I've imagined, you kind of get the feedback on where.
Yep.
I would love to know the eye-term sound system along the way sometime, because maybe that's something we can fundraise.
We
I
can
don't know, it depends what it is, but
We'll be there selling candy bars.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
So the rationale for not including the cafeteria painting, because it
Right.
is not an emergency.
Yeah.
It's not a critical need.
Yeah.
And I support it for that reason. I look at these end of year projects as what broke wasn't budgeted for. What's the life safety issue? What do our community expect us to maintain and keep in good order for healthy buildings?
And
So
we can put the cafeteria painting in the budget.
Let the art-
maybe we
Let
can
the art
have
program.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, put up murals or.
I mean, see the creative thinking like that. Now, I will say, that's why this list should be as robust and lengthy as it can be. And then I'm looking forward to Mike's output of your thinking on that. So scoreboards should be on here or other things, maybe this is like where we have the awareness, we need to have these discussions. We're talking about this list. I don't,
Yeah.
we're just ignorant of the things that we don't
That's
know.
okay.
We don't know, we
We've
don't.
got a list we're
We told
discussing
you.
right now, but yeah,
Tell you, tell us.
and Mike will work on that and we will work on. All right, so we have a motion on the floor for 138,500. That's the right amount,
For,
up to,
Up to.
up to 138,500
for these specific,
for the
Yeah.
light pole inspection, the van, the carpet and the furniture replacement.
So anything above that will go back to the taxpayer
Yeah.
as revenue. That 320 could go up to
Could be
more. So just so you know, it's all good. Just, yes, not a bad thing in the Mount Vernon.
Yes, yeah, yes.
yes, I think that's the expectation of our. I choose to believe that's the expectation of our community, is that if we don't have justifiable need to spend their tax dollars, we give it back, period.
All good.
Okay. All right, so let's vote. All those in favor of the motion? That would be 5-all.
Thank you very
So
much.
thank you. Appreciate that discussion, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Amy, for your and your team's work on putting all that together, because I know it's not easy process.
Week predicting.
Yes. So personnel. Mr.
Yeah,
Barrett.
so, we won't be in non-public tonight, but I have two things. First, and, is to accept the resignation with regret of Melissa Fraley, and you can see the letter of resignation in Trello. So if so if I could get a motion to accept that resignation, I appreciate that.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion made in second, with regret. Any discussion on that? If not, those in favor? That would be 5-all again. Thank you.
All right, and then the second, what I was hoping to do is approve the slate of teachers that are located in the board notes that have been sent out via memo. So if I get a motion to approve the full slate there as presented, appreciate that.
I will make that motion.
I'll second that one.
Okay, motion made in second. Any discussion? All right, those in favor? Thank you, that's 5-all again.
That's it.
That's it. So the one discussion we want to have though is on, has been between hiring.
Yeah.
And in Mike's memo, which I want to go back to. His memo
Yeah,
to us.
so I can speak to it. So we looked into it and we consulted legal and I think we have kind of like three options. We can continue on in this manner. We can grant the superintendent authority to grant contracts between certain dates. Or we can commit to the board being able to meet on a weekly basis with a quorum at 7:30 a.m. at the brick. So to approve the slates. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, we have three options.
I support the middle. What letting you guys
Yeah.
offer contracts in the summer. I mean, I would rarely question your hiring decisions to begin with. It's kind of your
You've
prerogative.
done the due diligence.
Yeah, so what I think moving forward, like for the summer for sure, and then because of the market, I might come back and, kind of ask you for, it might be April 15th, it might be May 1st, depending on the market and the competitiveness and the volume, because right now we still have 4 positions that we're filling, and you guys just approved, what, 9 or 10, so I think I want to be flexible with that, but I do appreciate that. And as I reflected on it, it's very rare that school boards don't approve but I do appreciate that piece, and then we could bring it to here.
So you need an action item.
I do need an
Yeah.
action.
So,
So three choices are continue with the process that you laid out,
mhm,
which is to
send it.
inform, let me just restate it, inform the board members of the choice that you've made, a couple of days to receive any feedback, if any. And if there's a question, you try to answer it or whatever, And if there's an impasse of some sort, then I guess we would have to do a meeting at 7:30 in the morning and sort it out. But if there's no issues, then you would go ahead and offer the conditional contract. That would be, the expectation at that point would be that we would ratify that at our next duly constituted meeting. I'm okay with that process.
That's current.
Current process. Yes.
So can I ask you a question? Like, why are we talking about this? Because I thought we approved this process before. Like, who complained about this? Because to
So
me,
one of our board
we were
members,
doing
they were
that.
worried about it being a conversation. If an email was sent out saying, are you in favor of hiring this person? And feedback is given in a written way, is that considered a conversation that creates a meeting? So there was feedback, so the superintendent went to our lawyers to ask on their opinion about it. And it is a gray area.
So,
I think we can't give feedback to all of us.
exactly.
Have to
So
go to the.
But you can't,
But we
you
can
can't.
give feedback directly back saying, I have no problem.
System Where you
to go,
contact the five of us and then we contact you and you come back and say, well, somebody had a concern about this, that becomes an indirect conversation, and that's what we
Are we
can't.
creating?
I like the system we're in now. I feel that it's empowering the superintendent to make a decision. And if something pops up and, you know, I'm fully aware of who they're hiring, and somebody in the community goes, oh my God, did you hear who they hired? And then you're fully informed and you know, yeah, I did, and really excited about it, or whatever the explanation is. I'm just perplexed in terms of us approving this, like why this would even be an issue, because I didn't receive emails from anybody, so I didn't think we were breaking requirements. Like,
No.
why are we paying an attorney to?
There was brought up, and actually the attorney said it is a gray area. So there's, so just
So
set
we said
aside.
it's a
that-
gray area because I responded and said, like, was it
No,
me? Was it my response with,
No.
I got no
If
problem
you
with
hit
this?
if you hit reply all,
Which I did not do.
no, but
No
if,
one should be
if
doing.
somebody did. And then started like, well, I have concerns about this person because of da-da-da, and then someone responded and said, well, yeah, but blah, 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 now you've created a meeting.
So we need to understand that we cannot do that. If anyone
There's also-
has a concern, it has to
It's
be
like
just.
even a conversation.
There's also not just conversation, but making, decision-making. An informal poll of us, which this is, can be seen as part of the decision-making process that's not transparent. So
That should be done in a meeting.
that's where it kind of gets into a gray area.
And so for me, you know, I'm more than comfortable continuing on with this as we move into the summer. And so I'd be all right continuing with it.
So maybe the answer is that we should continue this way, but we should all be cognizant that the only acceptable response, like, if you hear nothing within 48 hours, you're good to go. And the only acceptable response should be, I have a serious concern, we need a meeting.
And we still approve every teacher, every hire in public meeting.
You do.
Right,
Have to.
right,
At the next.
right. But there's, I happen to know this person's an axe murderer, so good God, we need to get in at 7:30 tomorrow morning. Or whatever, as quick as we're allowed to, we'll notice again.
Which maybe you wouldn't even be aware of until the next meeting if this process wasn't in place, because he would be given the authority to go ahead and hire, and then you'd find out August, this person was hired 4 months ago.
But we should not even be
That we should
responding with a, yeah, we're good, unless it's like, there's a concern, get us a meeting.
Or I'd like to have a conversation with you. Already.
Right.
So, no, I think we're good to continue on. If it's
Yep.
approved already, we don't. need
Yeah,
to-
it was- it was-
I like it as well because it's consistent with us having information early and often and an opportunity to provide feedback before ultimate decisions are made. For me, this is right what I've been talking about, an example of where I'd like us to be on a lot of it.
And what do you think, Mike? Has it been quick enough for you?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's working okay?
It works out really well. I mean, like 48 hours, we can go, that, keeps us competitive and we're good. So I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you, support for the resignation and the slate of teachers. So I appreciate that. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
So, only the last 2 things, is there anything else, for Mr. Berry? Right.
One thing just on that. So you said there were 4 open positions. Are there 5 now because of the school council?
No, I counted that. It's domain lead, school counselor. We're about to fill a classroom assistant position and we have a speech path. So we're getting there.
Okay.
Great.
So I did have, are we open for general things?
So this is the Yes, this is the
Okay.
one.
The only thing I wondered is I know Stephanie sent something out about the ninth graders submit their
Yeah,
proposals on the
Monday.
10th for ways they think the school could be improved. I would love to be here. I cannot be here. Is there a way, do they write that up or give that to us in some format other than the ninth graders?
Yeah, and there's just tables set up and you walk from room to, or table to table and ask them questions on this.
Just like a job fair, except.
Is someone going who could take just a couple, could you take just a couple notes and fill us in on like?
Yeah.
Generally, these are the types of things they were
I
talking
certainly
about.
can. It's fascinating. I went last year. I had a great time.
Right, I was like, I pulled up my calendar and I was like, oh, not as excited.
No problem.
I do actually have one thing for Mike, and when we take a look at the change to RSA with regards to non-public meetings being freed up after 10 years. So if they're not renewed in terms of the ceiling by a certain date, Dan, you probably voted for or against. Is it December 1st or something this year happens where a treasure trove of non-public meetings will now become public? And if we don't act upon it, it's defaulted to be non-public. So if we can just look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a big article in
Thank you.
Union Leader about that.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up.
All right.
Anything else? There's no one here in the public. Is there anyone online?
We have two people online.
If they're interested in speaking during non-public or during the public input section, please raise your hand. We will recognize you and bring you forward. Anyone raising their hand?
Negative goes right.
See no hands raised, so I will adjourn the meeting at 9:16 PM.